All right, and start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your host Ben, and this is going to be a little bit different. We're going to do a mini pod this time. Going to just cover the Man City, Real Madrid, and the Liverpool and Everton midweek fixtures. One had a funny ending from my perspective as a Liverpool fan, and the other one had me enraged, as you can probably figure out why. I'll be getting to that a little bit later on. I'll do the Man City game first, or Man City and Real Madrid game first, and then and then I'll try to stomach through getting through the Liverpool and Everton game. Not much to talk about in the actual game itself. I think most of the talking points really were focused on the refing, and the refing was really poor. And a couple crucial decisions were made that did impact the game. There's an obvious foul on Salah that wasn't called towards the end. Liverpool probably could have taken that free kick and eaten some time out to close it out that way. Everton got a couple extra minutes in stoppage time, which felt was a little generous to say the least. Uh, and there were very fouls throughout the entire game. It felt like any time Liverpool were just getting near Everton, were diving and getting fouls. But I can't just blame it all on that. I am angry at Michael Oliver. I think every Liverpool fan is. Uh, where he continues to just have kind of big he continues to get big, games where he continues to have kind of big time moments where he's making errors. The last time we saw him was he was sending off the kid Lewis Skelly, and Arsenal fans were upset about that, and rightly so. And he's been at the heart of a lot of some pretty negative calls recently over the last couple of years, and he's known for being England's best referee. I'm not sure that is at all the case. I don't really love him, but I prefer Anthony Taylor calling games these days. But anyways, it's not just that. This one, as far as where I'm coming from, this was on slot. Starting from the very selection, Luis Diaz is his false nine again from an Everton block. You knew what you were going to face with this Everton team, and he fell for it again. And he went through the whole game not playing with a striker, and for like 70 minutes, Liverpool I think had 5 shots the entire game, and yet they scored. They I think it was the only shot they had on target, thanks to a great Salah cross. But it was very few times that Salah was even able to get touches in or even around the penalty area. Everton made it very very hard for Liverpool to just create anything at all. And then Darwin Núñez came on, and Curtis Jones came on for Ryan Gravenberch, and it wasn't pretty, but they were actually able to get that second goal and actually had a lead, and it just felt they weren't able to see the game out. A couple of decisions though were a little bit strange. To be honest, the decision to take off Gravenberg early, it wasn't necessarily like he was having a bad game. Maybe they thought having Alexis deeper, he could find ways to play through lines a little bit better. But as the game went on, and as you needed to actually defend, to see out the game essentially, you've got 5'8" Alexis McAllister, who I love, trying to basically defend 50-50 balls in the air, versus 6'4" Decore, and Ryan Gravenberch is 6'3". You had someone like Endo that you could have possibly brought on, so that wasn't necessarily great. He brought on Jota in the 85th minute. I understand the idea of maybe trying to be a little, trying to get the next goal to try to just kill the game off. Jota did have a couple moments, and actually one of the few times that Salah was able to get into the box, it was because of Jota. Jota came on and immediately did more than Gakpo and Luis Diaz did in all of basically 30 seconds of being on, where he got the ball and did a nice little dribble, found Salah, and then Salah quickly, one-timed it, nearly got it past Pickford. It's a pretty good save by Pickford there. And then there was another moment where, after a couple Everton players kind of clashed into each other, play was allowed to carry on. And instead of maybe going to the corner or whatnot, Jota tried to dribble through the entire defense. Did a decent job to get past a couple of people, but he tried to do a little too much, and then ended up just kind of losing the ball. And lo and behold, it was just Everton were able to just kind of hang in there, and then just a loop ball crossed in, and a little controversy on maybe a couple shoves in the back not really being called, and the ball just found Tarkowski, and Tarkowski had a great hit. For a center back, you don't expect that kind of finish, and Everton deserved it. Everton were the better team for the most part, especially in the second half. And so Liverpool, I don't want to say threw away points again. It wasn't necessarily like the game versus Newcastle that came to mind, that first came to mind. But it wasn't great, and now they've allowed Arsenal fans to just have some hope. And even though Arsenal have found out that they're going to be without Kai Havertz for possibly the rest of the season after he had an injury in training during the midweek when they weren't playing, uh, that defense is still going to be able to carry them, pretty far. So if they get goals from set pieces like it's nothing. So it might not necessarily be pretty, but Arsenal are only a couple of points away. We'll see what they do versus Leicester coming up. Anyways, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I guess next episode. We'll cover that later. So those are just a couple of things that I was little concerned about. Uh, one final note to kind of say is it stings as a Liverpool fan, though I'm not necessarily from that area. Though following them for as long as I have, I do understand the importance of the derby. I understand the importance of the derby being at Goodison Park and that being the last one at Goodison Park as they're about to move. Everton's about to move to a new stadium, and so it from the kind of neutral aspect of it, the romanticism of it, I can appreciate it. I can appreciate those fans got to have that moment of all moments to come from behind and their fans even rushed the pitch. It was almost like that goal like saved them from relegation, or that goal won them a trophy, essentially. So it fair for the fans to experience that. I hate that it happened against the club that I supported. And I hate that it happened where at a moment when. The commentators were even talking about, 9 points with this, 10-ish or so games to go might have actually, possibly sealed the title at that point. And instead, it's 7, and then Arsenal can make it 4, and then Liverpool have a pretty rough stretch of games, coming up this next month. They have, I think it's Aston Villa, and then Man City, and then Newcastle all in a row. So that's not going to be the easiest stretch. So and then kind of an annoying Wolves side awaits them as well. And Wolves just beat Aston Villa just a week ago. Wolves have been a little resurgent since under their new manager Vitor Pereira, and Wolves are still fighting for their lives to stay up in the league as well. And Cunha can always surprise with a goal or two. So that'll be a tricky game as well. We'll see what Liverpool are able to do this weekend. But I am able to record this as Brighton have just beaten Chelsea, so I can speak about that. And they spanked them. And Brighton beat Chelsea basically 2 times in the same week. That game in the FA Cup was a little bit competitive. This one, not so much. Brighton have done a pretty good job to rebound since that Nottingham Forest game. Chelsea are an absolute mess right now. They've got injuries everywhere, and apparently they're going to be without Nicholas Jackson maybe for the rest of the season as well. So they're another club that it was annoying their fans that they didn't try to do anything in the January window to try to just shore some of that attack up. We've seen West Ham bring in Evan Ferguson. Speaking of Arsenal, Evan Ferguson was available for them. We've seen Aston Villa bring in a couple of attacking players, and Chelsea decided to kind of sit try. Now they have spent a ton of money anyways, and I don't necessarily know how their PSR thing works, but. Chelsea have spent $1 billion, and right now they don't have any recognizable striker. With Jackson being out, they don't really have. They have a lot of wingers as far as at least on a depth chart, but they don't really have a whole lot of wingers that can be reliable. And in this game, they lost Madueke, and after they lost Madueke, there's like Pedro Neto, and he hasn't necessarily had the best season this year either. And they just don't have anyone that can really beat a man 1v1. And can create. They don't have a whole lot of people making runs in behind for Cole Palmer to help out either. So the injury to Matareke in this game, it happened early on, and that just basically kind of sealed their fate. They were trying Nkunku and Cole Palmer together. It did not really work. Chelsea did not have any kind of threat really at all. And then at the back, it wasn't the best day for Levi Colwell. Wasn't the best day for Mark Cucurella. And Brighton just they get the first goal with Matoma. It's just a long ball from the keeper, and it's an unbelievable first touch by Kerry Matoma. Just messy like touch as the commentators were saying. It's just a long ball, but it's the first touch just completely fools. I think it's Levitt Colwell, and or maybe it's Chalba, and then Chalobah struggles to recover, and then possibly the keeper could have done better, but it's probably better for everyone that the keeper did not make that save because it's such a moment when you want it to be rewarded with a goal. That way, it's remembered a little bit more because sometimes you have brilliant moments, and because it doesn't lead to a goal, sometimes it easily gets forgotten about. But that will probably be up there for goal of the season as we end towards the end of the year. That'll be something that people remember. It was a special goal. Also, it's important that it was the first goal because Chelsea had a lot of the ball. Brighton at least were kind of sitting back. But Brighton get the first goal, and then they immediately got a second one, and it's entirely different goal. This one, it's a lot of clever play, a lot of quick one touches, build up play in the box, and Menta is able to finish that one off. And then Menta in the second half, after Welbeck was able to get the ball in the box, was able to play Minta in behind where he just burned Mark Cucurella 1v1. It could have been more, to be honest. Chelsea were all over the place. Brighton had some structure, had ideas, and Chelsea had really had none of that. Chelsea don't have a striker. Their fullbacks, Chelsea's, are tucked inside all game, so you can't even ask one to do an overlap to even help out a winger that maybe needs help beating their man 1v1. They Neto or Madueke, or when Madueke went out, Jadon Sancho, they those people out wide had no help. They had no one making runs either overlapping them or inside them. They didn't have any runners from midfield either. They got the ball and they were just basically forced to do everything on their own. And then they're also asked to do this without really a striker to like aim anything into the box, aim any kind of cross into. So, I mean, Chelsea did have a goal that was ruled out, where I think Enzo scored, but I think he was also foul called for a push in the back. And yeah, as a Liverpool fan, I did notice it was kind of annoying how that one was called, and they allowed the one on Kanate versus Everton to stand. But anyways, but the thing to talk about with Braden as well is so they were thumped. They were thumped really bad versus Nottingham just a couple of weeks ago. And what has changed here? Well, one, they get Carlos Baliba back. Obviously, not having him was massive. But two, we did see a bit of a different Brighton here. So no João Pedro, and it seemed like Jorginho Rudder was allowed to really have some freedom in a way that maybe he doesn't always get when Yao Pedro is playing. I could be reading too much into that, but it just seemed him and Welbeck as the actual striker seemed to work really, really well together. It was a nice little tandem together. And Jorginho Rudder had a lot of clever flicks in this build up. Strong in duels. I mean, he's a huge person in stature, 6'3" or whatnot. And it just he was doing well. It seemed Brighton were really good at playing passes from the back and finding Rudder, and Rudder would do either a flick to someone running behind him, or he'd do some kind of wall pass, some kind of layoff. There was a lot of just quick combination plays there. They were playing around Chelsea for fun. They were going longer than we had seen recently, and you can do that when you have people like Matoma or even or Menta or even if Welbeck drops in, Ruder can make runs ahead. So they were able to make it so it was harder to kind of predict what they were trying to do. Much more interchange and much more variety in how they were moving. But the other thing too is we saw a different structure. So it was Veltman, and it was no, not Velt. It was it was Henselwood, and it was Carlos Baliba, kind of like the midfield too. Sometimes we've seen Iori played there. Sometimes we've seen Henselwood kind of played there by himself, like we saw versus Nottingham Forest. And so it seemed like that was a much better pairing for Carlos Baliba. We'll see if that continues, going forward, or sometimes it's been Matty O'Reilly, but it just felt Carlos Baliba was a little bit more comfortable in where he was with that pairing. But we also saw almost it was a back four that turned into a back five at times. So Menta was sometimes the wing back, and what that meant is you had Joey Veltman, and with someone like an Adam Webster, and with a Van Hecke. And it just seems that third extra center back who had license to sometimes run out. So Veltman would sometimes see if Enzo would be trying to receive the ball. Veltman would go out and mark him, and it almost seemed like Brighton went to almost like a man-to-man kind of marking system. Uh, and it was interesting. It was interesting to say Veltman to me seemed much more composed and calm, and I'm kind of using the same words. It just seemed much more at ease, as I say it again, in this kind of role than when he's asked to be a fullback when he doesn't really go up to help out anyways. And here, Veltman can still cover lots of ground. You're able to still recover, so that way the balls in behind aren't gonna hurt someone like a Webster or Van Hecke, where Brighton had been vulnerable in the past to those runs in behind. No Lewis Dunk here, and I actually think Brighton were better without Lewis Dunk. That's another thing to speak about as well. But the role that Minta was able to play as a wingback, so he was able to lock up Sancho, but he was also, it seemed like he had license to really go forward and also kind of be their wing option as well, and just that combination play of when he was making runs, so he'd be making runs kind of from deeper. It was really surprising Chelsea as well, and that's the reason why he ends up with both of these goals, is he's making these runs kind of late and deep, and Sancho wasn't really helping out defensively, and Marc Cucurella was just forced to deal with a Minta getting the ball where Minta has a whole lot of space or a whole lot of pace and a whole lot of momentum running at him, and then and then just Marc Cucurella was not able to stop him at all. So big moment for Brighton. They didn't have a ton of shots, but they had five on target. I felt like they could have had a lot more. I mean, it was 3-0 relatively early in the second half, and the game was killed. So Chelsea have some issues. Chelsea have issues at the back. Uh, they've had issues at keeper for a while. No, and now in this game, Cole Palmer was getting the ball, and he just seemed like he was really frustrated towards the end, where he was starting to be do a little too much. Wasn't trying to play people in, but then again, at the same time, he doesn't really have a whole lot of teammates to play stuff in. Too, losing Jackson has really killed what Cole Palmer's really best at doing, and that's where Chelsea fans have been struggling with someone like a Jackson this whole season, and I can understand why, because he has missed a lot of big moments. But you see what's missed when he's not able to play, or someone similar isn't able to play. You miss those runs behind. Chelsea weren't able to score or go long the way that Brighton were. So good for Fabian Horza to get this team right. Brighton have been kind of a hit and miss team. It's been hard to really see what they are. This was one where you saw a little of De Zerbi here. And it's still in the minds of a lot of these players, but you saw the quick one touch passing. The you saw the give and goes, the 1-2s, you saw the triangles, you saw them moving the ball quickly, you saw them, looking to exploit space when it was in behind as well. And again, it wasn't predictable. It was this was good to see. We'll see if they're able to continue it on. Brighton are still alive in the FA Cup because they beat Chelsea as well. We'll see if Brighton can maybe do a little mini cup run with this manager. And when you've got someone like Matoma, who's now kind of on form a little bit from them. They had everyone. It's easy to remember what Brighton were doing before, or it's easy to forget what Brighton were doing before they had that Nottingham Forest game. But Matoma, I think, is on 4 or 5 goals over the last 6 games for them. I think he also scored in the FA Cup game as well. So maybe that's all competitions. Matoma's starting to find form again, and again, for me, I think Brighton are best when they have an actual striker, someone like a Welbeck. To me, helps them out a little bit more. And here's a case where they're missing Yao Pedro, and I don't really think he was missed. And that is kind of weird to say, because Yao Pedro is probably the most kind of prized. You look at who teams would maybe want to poach from this team. Well, we know that Matoma was the subject of a big Saudi deal. We'll see if Saudi try to do that again. Carlos Baliba would certainly be up there, but his price tag's going to be going to be up there as well. But Yao Pedro is probably up there as well, and it just seems Brighton can maybe play a little bit without him. It seemed like they were stronger out of possession as well. Just the duels. Chelsea didn't have any runners in behind, so you weren't able to necessarily exploit the back line. Also, I just feel like they're also better without Dunk anyways. I think that's kind of been a thing for a while. There was a moment where Dunk was missing for a lot of the stretch before Christmas, and Brighton were on a pretty good stretch. They were one of those clubs that was in that 7-8 kind of role where you didn't know if they could push on or not, and then they got dunked back and they started dropping points again. So we'll see if Brighton can continue this run of form, and it's good to see because it's been a while for you've watched a Brighton game where they've put two halves together. One half, it wasn't just 45 minutes of good football. So good, good for them to see, and for Chelsea, things are starting to collide a little bit, and it's another case where Chelsea had kind of the game that Enzo Maresca probably would have wanted, where you've got the two fullbacks that are trying to just play really, really narrow in midfield. It's something we've seen Pep kind of do this a whole lot too, and Maresca is a Pep disciple. Maybe Mark Cucurella can't necessarily go out wide and offer you those runs. Or maybe you don't necessarily want to because you're worried about being exposed a little bit at the back. It's possible that can be argued. One thing I do think is the case. You know, uh, Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez. That for the whole time that midfield pairing has been a little bit off. And I think right now Chelsea fans, or at least Chelsea ownership, is maybe regretting losing someone like Conor Gallagher because they shipped Conor Gallagher out, and they brought in Yao Felix, and now Yao Felix is out in AC Milan, so they didn't really fancy Felix either. There've been a couple moves here that haven't really made a whole lot of sense, and Chelsea were having that moment in December, or even early December, where they they were close to kind of pushing, in that top three ish spot. People were talking, is it Chelsea or Arsenal that are the biggest threats to Liverpool at that point? And I was kind of buying the Kool Aid a little bit. There was a moment when they didn't necessarily destroy Brentford on the scorecard, but they destroyed them in like everywhere that the advanced stats would have suggested. And that was when I started to look at Chelsea a little bit differently. But man, as things reversed, and you look at their back line as well. Someone like a Levy Colwell, you would think would be an up and comer maybe for England, and this is as bad as maybe he's played. Chalobah, likewise, Chalobah just completely burned on that Matoma goal, and it just seems Chelsea don't really have a reliable. You spent £1 billion and you don't see you don't see a Saliba on their team, or Kanate or Van Dijk for that kind of money. You don't see. They paid a lot of money to bring in Fofana, and Fofana's just injured for them. Maybe Fofana is supposed to be their answer to that. They haven't had Reece James really the whole season, and now they've just gotten him back. It doesn't seem like when he plays, he's actually asked to actually play as a bombing fullback anymore. And it was interesting to see Marla Gustu get the start, and then Gustu as well wasn't able to offer wide creation. So a little bit surprising. And then, like I said, the squad makeup is a bit weird because the back line, you can look at faults. You could look at faults maybe at the fullbacks as well. Maybe not necessarily Gusto and James, but maybe Cucurella. I keep trying to downplay him. He's responsible for winning Spain the Euros. He was very good for the entire summer in Euros. So, but they don't really have anyone, I guess, after him to, I guess, give him competition, or maybe make sure his minutes are rested. In midfield, you have Carlos Baleba, you have Enzo Fernandez, and they spent over 200 million for those two players, maybe 220 million combined. And that just seems to have been a big mess up. And then the attack wise, you have Cole Palmer, and then I don't really know what you have. You have a lot of young people. It's a very young squad, but you paid so much money to create this team, and you don't really see where the growth is really. Or especially you don't see anything really behind it either. A couple injuries, and then the squad is really bare. It is surprising that it's gotten to this point. But anyways, that is Chelsea, and that is Brighton, and we will get started with Man City and Real Madrid, and this is going to be mostly an in-depth kind of look into this game. We'll see how long I go. I'm probably not going to spend a ton of time on Liverpool and Everton, to be honest, mostly for my sake, but also there really wasn't a ton in the game. But for the most part, that was because of what Everton did, and it was also a little bit, in my opinion, what Slot went with. So, anyways, we'll get started with Man City and Real Madrid, and it is Unbelievably, it is 2-3, and this is a contest that usually is enjoyable, and it delivered. Once again, we have a goal from Holland, and then Mbappe, who kind of shunned it. Weirdly enough, as good as this game was, the goals were not necessarily that great. There were mistakes just everywhere, or just not really the most sightly kind of goals. Maybe more kind of luck, I guess, even for the Holland goal. Gvardiol has some kind of it's a beautiful pass by Jack Grealish, but Gvardiol kind of chests it down. I don't really think he's trying to chest it to Holland, but maybe I'm being a little unkind there. But some fortune there, but it doesn't matter. The Holland is right on cue, and he has a pretty nice finish because that's not the easiest finish. The way he's able to adjust his body to keep that down. And then Mbappe, like I said, there's another really nice floated ball in. I think this time by Danny Ceballos. Clears over the back line, and Mbappe just is everything about this wrong. But the sidesman still is able to shin it into the net. And then Phil Foden, one of the few times he's active in the second half, he's able to take on the Real Madrid left back. I think it's Mendy, and then it's Ceballos kind of hit, and both of them kind of run into each other a little bit, knee to knee, and Foden is taken down on the box, and Holland converts. At 2-1, you figured maybe Man City can actually eke this out. Maybe it's not the end of the world, even if it ends 2-2 going to the Bernabeu, and it that basically happens. It becomes 2-2 because of an Ederson error in multiple ways. Everyone is focusing on the save, and the save is really terrible, but it's crazy how this even happens because uh, Man City or Real Madrid have just had an attack, and nothing's really come from it. It's either a goal kick or Man City basically have a ball to restart possessions, and Ederson just does I think a drop kick. He does something very very goofy, and he gets it entirely wrong and basically drop kicks it right to Jude Bellingham, basically 30 yards from his goal. So it's just a hard kind of clearance. And then from there, basically, Real Madrid are able to get numbers forward. Eventually, Brian Diaz gets on the ball, and then he plays in Vinny ahead. And then Vinny from the angle has a shot. Ederson has to do better with the shot. And then, in my opinion, I think it's just the whoever it was, whether it was Stones or someone else. Uh, uh, Maybe it's Kovacic. They're just surprised that Ederson just has such a terrible save that they kind of think they're kind of frozen in time. But I have a feel there's someone right next to Brahim Diaz that I think if they're more kind of on their toes, they're able to box out. It might be Kovacic. They're able to box out Brahim Diaz, maybe able to even being able to get to the ball. But it is what it is, and it should have ended 2-2. At this point, Carlo Ancelotti has subbed Mbappe out, and he's brought on the left back. He's brought on Fran Garcia. It's not necessarily like they're trying to go for the win here. They're kind of uh, they're they're uh, they're fine with taking this back to the Bernabeu with a draw, and instead, out of nowhere, there's a ball that's launched kind of towards halfway line. Jude Bellingham wins the first header, and then from here, it's just a you can go with everyone. I think it's Kovacic tries to play a back pass to uh, to Rico Lewis. It's a terrible play by Kovacic. Rico Lewis then it's really harsh on him, but he's got to do better than what he does. He tries to go for it, and basically he's beaten. And at that point, because he's beaten, Vinny's able to just run by him, and then from there, Ederson comes out. I don't really think it's that big of an error because if not, it's not really like there's going to be cover, and you're just going to allow Vinny to dribble all the way into the box and then probably just pass it into that anyways. So Ederson coming out at least made Vinny have to think, and he does do the dink. And I don't really know if Vinny is meaning to pass this to Jude Bellingham or not. It's possible that Vinny got the dink wrong. But it doesn't really matter because Bellingham is able to get the tap in because John Stones is just a statue and just is too late to run back, and Bellingham's just basically able to run past him for the game winning goal. And so Man City out. That is kind of the focus that a lot of people are talking about, and I think there are reasons to think yes, and then I'm gonna maybe argue that there is possibly some reason for optimism as well, though it's going to be hard for me to do that. But basically, we're going to talk about how this happened, why was the first half for Man City so much different than the second half, or vice versa, for Real Madrid. So is it all dooms mode or not? I'm going to kind of chicken out and say yes and no. It is very rare that Real Madrid loses a knockout tie when the second leg is at home. They do like their stadium. They get a lot of ref calls, decisions their way at that stadium as well. Uh, but I do think the way that the first half went, you could see maybe some positives here. Uh, but that said, I feel like Pep tried to have control in this game, and by doing that, he had John Stones kind of playing more in midfield, and it seemed the idea was to play kind of a high-ish defensive line, and basically the idea was to starve Man City from the ball. If they don't have it, then they can't really get Vinny and and Mbappe and Jude and whatever behind them. And for the most part, it was working. And just they started to have some injuries, and that kind of factored in a little bit here. But in the second half, they started to get little careless with the ball. You start to see Kevin De Bruyne start to just trying to find Holland a little bit more. You get another long stretch where Holland just isn't able to get a touch on the ball at all. You start to see Foden trying to do too much and is starting to lose the ball. You start to see Gvardiol start to he has a moment where he tries to take a shot on, probably could have recycled. This is one of the few times where I think they probably should have tried to be, because they had the lead at this point. They probably should have been trying to recycle the ball as much as possible, because Real Madrid are terrible. I don't want to say terrible, but Real Madrid are not necessarily great at playing out of possession. So the idea was starting to work, and then because Man City started to kind of go rogue a little bit, they lose control of the game, and then from that point on, they're still playing a high line, and then at this point on, also, Man City don't have the legs to turn Real Madrid over, and so you just start to see Real Madrid's midfield kind of take control instead in Danny Ceballos and Camavinga, and then also because of that, Jude Bellingham starts to come alive as well, and because Jude comes alive, all of a sudden Mbappe and Vinny Jr. Start to come alive. You start to see Valverde on Real Madrid start to come alive. So that is a little bit why we have there. And the one thing I'm gonna say is, possible the tactic was maybe okay in theory, even in practice in the first half, but the more you saw how dangerous Real Madrid were on the counter, to me it almost felt like you're playing into their hands a little bit by trying to do this, because if you're gonna play this way, you just cannot turn the ball over at all. The thinking for me was, why not actually kind of sit deep and actually just soak in and make Madrid actually play through you? Because we've seen in Spain, Madrid kind of struggle with that a little bit. But the only problem about that is, to do that, to play it that way, you have to have transition threats yourself. And so Pep didn't pick people like, you have Holland, but that's really it. Pep didn't really pick anyone to make these runs in behind. There was Doku available, or I guess maybe wasn't fully fit. You had someone like Marmoush that could have been tried, and that'll be kind of the main thing that I kind of focus on. There needs to be a different kind of thinking on how to play for that next game. And the other one to think about is, Nico Gonzalez was had a knock. Maybe he wasn't able to go here. There's been talk that he'll be able to go this weekend, and you think with Nico possibly available, Pep doesn't really like throwing people in that have just joined in. I think he's going to have to. I think you got to risk it. So I would play Nico Gonzalez instead of, John Stones did an admirable job. I would probably try to fit Nico Gonzalez in there. I would not do Bernardo Silva. His legs look done. I would not do Kevin De Bruyne, weirdly enough, as his legs look done. And then you need help at the back. One thing that happened in the first half to the second half is Pep had to make some subs, not because he wanted to, but for injury. He loses Akanji and he loses Nathan Ake. And so that's a point where I think you need to trust the kid Kashanov, the Uzbekistan center back from Linz that they brought in. There's someone like Victor Reyes as well that apparently got some minutes in the FA Cup game. I haven't really seen anything from him, but what I saw from Kushanov, I he had that horrible 10-minute stretch versus Chelsea, but after that, I really did like what I saw, and I think you need to have someone with that kind of aggression to feature. You didn't see him versus Arsenal. I think that was a mistake. So I don't necessarily know if Pep will do that or not, but I think you have the profiles, you have possible players that can help you. We'll see if Pep, but it'll require maybe Pep having to think differently. So that's kind of the issue as well. And then the negative here is Ederson has a nightmare to finish the 8 minutes, but before that, he was single-handedly keeping them in the game. They were I mean, when Real Madrid, came to life, Real Madrid actually, started off pretty well as well, but Real Madrid just were having no issues getting behind, and with the only problem was they weren't able to really find a finish, but, Ederson had to make 3 or 4, maybe 5 saves in that second half where, yeah, again, just another day, it could have been the tie could have been done and over with. And the other problem about that is, for the most part, that was City were allowing Real Madrid to get behind them, and it wasn't necessarily on transitions, per se. Like Man City actually, or Real Madrid actually had pretty good control of the game, and they were still able to get those runs in behind. So the back line was not able to handle this, even especially with the changes and as the game kind of went on as well. Gundogan comes on, Kovacic comes on, and they offered really nothing to be honest. And as the game went on as well, just you see Foden, you see Bernardo Silva, you see uh, Kevin De Bruyne, and they don't have the legs to cover any kind of spaces. And you also see Rico Lewis having to mark Vinny Jr. and just if you're a Man City fan, just as that second half was just going on, you probably would have feared the worst. You don't think you would have expected this to happen with keepers and everyone else just giving the game away, but you figured it was probably not going to be your day, and that was basically what we saw. Uh, and the other thing to talk about here is I've seen this recently with Man City, and it wasn't necessarily the Arsenal game. It was PSG. It was another moment where Man City were winning the game, and then the moment that the other team was able to just run through their midfield and run at their back line, and there was just nothing that Man City could do. PSG were able to do it, and basically Real Madrid were as well, and similar kind of attackers. So definitely some things for Pep to think about. And speaking of PSG, it is very funny how they've lost Mbappe, and it would be interesting if they actually meet Real Madrid's Mbappe later on in the Champions League, because it feels like right now. Uh, they are absolutely flying. They've got Dembele playing through the middle. They've got Barcola and Desiree Dure, and they've added Kvaratskhelia to that attacking lineup. And they've got someone like Zaire Emery that's not even able to start for them anymore because you have Yao Neves and you have Fabian Ruiz and you have Vitinha, and then you also they seem like they've shored up the back line with Nuno Mendes and Hakimi that are able to either play inside or outside, able to actually go bomb forward. They're one of the few teams that plays with attack minded fullbacks, and they get their fullbacks high. But you're able to do that because of what they have for the back line. They've made a really nice signing in this Paco guy that they got from Frankfurt, and if PSG did something very interesting where they lost Mbappe, and they didn't just go star hunting. Now they did bring in Vavaskelia this past January, but they did a different kind of rebuild than maybe you would have expected, and it's taken a little bit while for them to gel. They are in the playoff tie, just like Man City, just like Bayern, just like Real Madrid. But it feels like if they get on a run, they could possibly, depending on who they have to beat, they could find themselves possibly making a final. They've done a very good job to rebuild, and as a Liverpool fan, I am a little bit worried about them. If that is the draw, there's been talks that possible PSG would face either Bayern or either Barcelona or possibly Liverpool. I don't really understand how the draws work. I would be fearing PSG, especially someone like Andy Robinson having to go up against either a Barcola or a Desiree Dure or even a Dembele. They don't really play with a striker, out and out striker per se, but Dembele has just been out and out, just being scoring for fun, and just they're one of those teams that just they can hit you on the break, but they can control the ball as well with their midfield. They can win it back. It feels like without Mbappe, they're a better pressing side. is weird enough to say. They've managed to lose Mbappe, they managed to lose Neymar and Messi, and now they've come back and they've rebounded really well. And it's not they did spend a little bit of money, but it's not like they went star hunting like they did in the past, though they did behind bring in Vavaskelia, who hasn't necessarily featured for them even yet. So that team can possibly even get better. But anyways, that is PSG. Um, getting starting with this game. The reason why Man City probably had some hope here is both teams have been a mess a little bit here, and even with City's poor form, this probably was the time to knock Real Madrid out. The last time we saw Man City as well, we saw Ortega having a bit of a mar, and you figured, well, that's why Ederson actually plays every game, and then you see here, well, maybe not. But the other thing here is Man City, had they opened their pocketbook. They I guess they got some news and maybe they weren't going to be hit with any kind of sanctions and for keeping their powder dry for the last winter or so, they opened it up. They spend they did. They spent something like 200 million net this January, and the only thing to say about that is not a single player was picked to play in this game, and or maybe Marmoush got some minutes, maybe here and there towards the end, but it was only like five. Uh, so I think for City to have a chance, they have to at least risk. I would say play at least two. I would pick three players that they brought in that I would personally I would pick for that next Real Madrid tie. That is only in a couple of days, and then with Real Madrid, the there's like vengeance storylines everywhere here. There's been a mini rivalry between these two sides because they've been meeting a lot in the Champions League and not really in the final, like you probably would have expected. Every year they've been picked, basically one and two to win the cup, and they've always kind of faced each other. Usually in semifinals. This is one of the you wouldn't have expected to be this early in the competition, but Vinny Jr. has was in his opinion, denied a Ballon d'Or. Now, I think Raju was equally deserving, but Vinny was definitely special, especially in the competition. It's in the Champions League part of the competition, or in the knockout rounds last season, and he is a big reason why Real Madrid won the Champions League last year. But Vinny has made a lot of comments that he's thought betrayed by the French committee, or he thought it was stolen from him. And City fans had a giant banner pregame to remind him of that. So there was individual motivation. You would think there you have the Mbappe versus Holland being the new Messi and Ronaldo rivalry that's been ginning up. So you got to see that as well. And then the other thing to end with is you see how Pep has developed his squad over the years. You see how he likes playing. You see the comments that he makes. And then you see the way that Real Madrid, especially under Carlo Ancelotti's squad, it has been created, and it's almost anti-Pep. You've got pace, you've got power, you've got 1v1 ability, you've got dual winners in midfield, and it's a sense that it's systemless than system. There's so much freedom here, and at times you can be schoolboyishly exposed and open. Especially when you have someone like Lucas Vasquez playing right back, he's not really right back. When you have someone like Rodrigo playing on the right wing, he's not really a right winger, and he just leaves that space. And just so many times you just see so many players just on one side of the field, and the entire other side is wide open. That's fine if you don't lose the ball, but Madrid take so many risks. They lose the ball a lot. So in Spain, they haven't even always been able to get away with this. Teams that have been relatively structured and compact have really given them fits. Atletico just did a couple of days ago. So it's always an intriguing affair. It definitely there's the one that really kind of that highlighted it, or that really kind of took this maybe into the stratosphere, was when a couple of years ago when it looked like Real Madrid or Man City were going to reach their first Champions League final. And then I think it's Rodrigo who just came around. It was him and Camavinga who just came around and just scored two goals out of nowhere. That was when I think Benzema was still being able to play for them. Maybe Benzema was even the Ballon d'Or winner at that time, and that was when they were able to get through that game just at the very end, and then they went on to beat Liverpool in the final, unfortunately, for me. But it just feels like it's been ramped up every single year. The year that Man City actually won the Champions League versus Inter Milan, they had to go through Real Madrid as well, and they thumped them at home. When in a tie that was when Bernardo Silva had a couple of goals, and I think last year it was wild as well. It was a 3-3 kind of affair in the first game, and then in the second game, uh, who was it? I think Bernardo Silva or Kovacic uh, it went to PKs, and then they missed the PKs. So Real Madrid were able to advance through just PKs. So that's kind of where this has been building for the last couple of years. But anyways, we'll get to the starting lineups, and we get a change I wasn't really expecting. So you see Akanji almost at the right back. You see Ake. You see a lot of defensive minded players. You see Akanji, Ake, Diaz, and Gavardiol. And then you see John Stones. John Stones played in midfield, and that was almost given a Rodri role. And then you see Bernardo Silva, and it seemed he almost had a free role with Kevin De Bruyne as well, and we'll kind of get to that a little bit later on. And then Foden, Holland, and Grealish. And so Foden's supposed to come somewhat kind of play on the right, and he wasn't really doing that. Uh, and so wait, was it Foden? No, it was might have it was Savio that started, and then Grealish, and then eventually Foden came on. So Grealish starts and he plays a role in the first goal, and then he has to go off injured, and so that's when Phil Foden comes on, and then Foden basically plays on that side and it moves Savio over to the left. And Savio actually seems. I made comments even before that maybe he makes more sense to play on the left side, and that's looking like that's not the case because we've seen that a couple of times now. We saw it with Arsenal. We saw it here. It just seems Gvardiol is less influential when Savia is playing. You're not really seeing any kind of runs in behind anymore. It was kind of just ball to feet. And we when Foden came on, it seemed like just there was no him and Kevin De Bruyne kind of playing on the same side. They were just running into each other. There was never, Foden gets on the ball and he's looking to play people in behind, and there's no one in front of him other than Holland. And Kevin De Bruyne was dropping in and getting the ball, and he was having the same kind of issue as well. So not having anyone to be direct was hurting them, but really hurting both of their games. Uh, but the kind of storyline for them was the injuries. You lose Grealish, and then you lose Akanji, and then you lose Nathan Ake, and that entirely changed. You have to move Stones back into from midfield into center back, and it just seems Stones was really kind of orchestrating the game at that point in midfield, and then when he moves to center back, he's not able to see the ball or dictate things nearly as much. Stones and Ruben Diaz is not a good back line anymore. They don't have the legs and the pace to handle Mbappe and Vinny just running behind them, especially when you're playing a high line. And they lost Akanji, and in the beginning, Akanji was doing a pretty good job to somewhat keep Vinny Jr. quiet, and instead he goes off, and the second half starts with Rico Lewis having to play, and within the first 5 minutes or so, Vinny Jr. figures he can beat Rico Lewis 1v1, get to the byline, and get some crosses in, and he did that a couple of times. It nearly led to a Jude Bellingham goal. So that's kind of where we are for their lineup. And then we get to Real Madrid. They almost went with a 4-2-2-2 or 4-4-2 with Jude and Rodrigo out wide, Vinny and Mbappe up top. And it was a bit of a surprise. It did not necessarily work that much, and maybe we'll get to a little bit why. I'm trying to think if there was really that big of a difference, that big of a change in the second half, and it started with Jude Bellingham playing a little bit more in the middle, but I don't necessarily think that that is the case. I think they were basically playing in the same kind of lineup, and what happened was when Rico Lewis came on, he wasn't really, sticking out wide. He was kind of tucking inside, almost play kind of, the inverted kind of role, as you say. And that just allowed Bellingham to play a little bit more in the middle. And because he was playing more in the middle, you know, you have Phil Foden that wasn't really, staying on the touchline. He was coming inside. You had Kevin De Bruyne that was struggling to really influence. And just in a weird way, Bellingham, just by just marking Rico Lewis, was able to mark those two out of the game as well. And by also being in the middle, he was able to get on the ball a little bit more, and he was way more influential in the second half. I thought the other change that I saw as the second half went on was Fernand Mendy, who didn't really touch the ball much, but he influences the game by his positioning. And what was happening was you started to see Mendy kind of play a little bit higher up and a little bit wider. And what you saw was Ceballos almost running into that almost like left back kind of role. And this was helpful because one, Man City weren't able to really run out and mark Ceballos to get the ball. And what was happening is you started to see him really kind of control and take over the game, and that really helped Real Madrid get a little bit more control. And as Madrid has control of the game, and especially when you're trying to when Man City are trying to win the ball back and whatnot, all it takes is one man to just miss or one man to get played out of position, and immediately you can get runners in behind, and that really was basically the game plan. So we'll get started with the first half. And so here again, you're seeing Madrid lining up a little bit differently. Already spoke about that. Early on, I guess we'll talk about the Jack Grealish effect. So I was thinking in the beginning, you want someone with pace to be picked ahead, but low key, this was working. So Jack Grealish is staying wide. So that's one thing important as well. He's doing well to stay wide, but he's also running towards the ball. And usually, I hate this, but what was happening here is Valverde is following him. So Valverde is played at right back. Normally he's a midfielder, but he played at right back instead of Lucas Vasquez and was exceptional. Um, so Valverde, if maybe he plays a little bit out of position here, but he follows. He's been following Jack Grealish for a couple of these, and you're for a change. We did not see this for Arsenal. We haven't seen this for a lot of this season. Holland doesn't just hang around in the middle of the field. Holland starts to run into the empty channel, and so you're using Jack Grealish to run towards the ball. It's almost like a decoy to make sure he brings someone to run with him, and that's leaving. There's no one playing in the right back kind of spot, no one defending that channel, and Holland is actually starting to make runs into there, and you see it in the first possession. You're like 30 seconds into the game, you see this where this time Real Madrid are able to defend it. I think it's Tchouaméni that wins the header, but you see it later on, and that's where City basically get their first goal. Uh, and the other thing that Grealish is offering is he's staying wide and he's effectively holding City's lone width. And Gvardiol is able to kind of play a little bit more inside and able to make some runs a little bit more inside. And what was happening over and over again was it was really confusing Rodrigo on who to mark. Valverde doesn't really want to run and mark that really high up because of like what I was saying. So sometimes Valverde wasn't always staying there, but by doing this little tweak, it seemed like Man City had an extra man to just kind of play some combination passes, just to kind of keep the ball a little bit. And it's they started off actually for the most part, controlling the game, but we get to like I don't know 8 minutes or so in, and then Madrid start on fire. There's a loose ball, and then Valverde again, Johnny on the spot, just decides to just float something in behind where, again, City's back line is exposed early, and then Ederson comes out and makes a mistake. Not the first time that Ederson makes a mistake, so a bit of a warning here, and we'll get to that later on. But it is offside, so Man City a little bit of a reprieve. But so after a few kind of spells of possession, just one misplayed clearance here actually is what allows Valverde to get on the ball, and he floats a really good ball for Vinny to chase. And he's in 1v1 in the box, and he tries to go around Ederson, and Ederson completely takes him out. But Vinny is just a little bit offsides because of Gvardiol. But then the chances just start to flow to Real Madrid. So we have Vinny to Mbappe here, and Mbappe in the box off the right, and it's the first of a lot of pretty good Ederson saves. You figure because of the angle, Ederson should make the save, but at the same time, it's not only doesn't make the save, he doesn't make it so it is rebound. So it's a pretty decent save here. Uh, and so, but the problem for this is it's so easy for Vinny to get on the ball. He plays a beautiful ball in the open space behind, and it's one of those Travala passes, like outside the foot kind of passes, and he curves it around the back line for Mbappe to chase onto, and Gvardiol is nowhere to be found. I mean, he's in the area, but he's not going to beat a foot race to Mbappe, and Real Madrid or Man City are just really lucky here. It's one of the few times that Bellingham's able to get on the ball in the first half. He does really well here, though. He collects it under pressure, and then he holds off Bernardo Silva, and then he finds Vinny, and then Vinny does well to kind of evade Ruben Diaz kind of flying at him. So Ruben Diaz tries to charge at him to stop the attack at its root, and he misses. And then Vinny just has an unbelievable pass of the night, really, to Mbappe. Probably should have been a goal. He wasn't on goal, and he just didn't get the angle. He didn't fire it enough, into the net. He had it too close to Ederson. Ederson still had to go down and make a save though. But then just a few minutes after that, they get a second chance, and it's Vinny to Mendy, and Mendy misses. Both of them basically mess up an open goal. So here, Bernardo Silva loses the ball, and it starts to be a bit of a trend in that opening, 30 minutes or so, where Man City start to just be really careless with the ball. They can't keep it. So Bernardo here loses the ball high upfield. Madrid then just kind of play with the ball a little bit in the box. Eventually, Rodrigo gets onto it. He draws everyone's attention onto him, and then just one dribble just gets City completely all messed up. And there's Fernand Mendy completely free in the box. Rodrigo does well to find him. Mendy, to me, should probably go for goal here, but he opts to play it to Vinny again. Then Vinny also can go for goal, and he opts to instead kind of drag Ederson onto him, and then he quickly touches it back to Mendy. And it's a good idea in hindsight because Ederson is completely fooled, and Mendy has an wide open net here. And instead, for some reason, he takes too long to get. He takes one too many touches. He doesn't fire it in the first time. He doesn't fire it in the open net. And instead, when he finally gets the ball out of his feet, Ake is there to block it. There was also Mbappe open for a square ball for a tap in. Basically, Real Madrid were just walking the ball in the net here. This should have been the opening goal. So City very fortunate here. Savinho has completely lost Mendy in the chaos here, and Rodrigo didn't really have his best game, but he had moments. There was another moment he did something like this as well. He was able to find Mbappe completely wide open. It was a very similar kind of moment, and Mbappe just hit it over the bar. Uh, but that was just kind of the few things to talk about there. And then we have Jude running into Ruben Diaz. So we have another chance. It's a couple of minutes after this, where Vinny gets on a loose ball. So Kevin De Bruyne here is surrounded, and he loses the ball. And then Jude kind of charges at Ruben Diaz, and the deflection goes in Vinny's path. It looks to be in on goal, and it's just he either trips over or Ake and Akanji just do enough to run back and put him off. But you see that here at least they have the recovery pace to be able to handle stuff in behind. But in the second half, you didn't have either of those players on, so that ended up kind of showing up a little bit here. But Real Madrid or Man City are living very dangerous. Vinny and Mbappe are alongside as well, and he couldn't really get rid of the ball. And I think he's also probably fouled when Vinny is in the box, but it wasn't really looked at. But that said, all that domination, and yet Man City are the team that go ahead. And and it's Holland of all teams, of all players, and so the guy that basically hadn't touched the ball at that point. So City get the first goal, and it comes from basically Madrid starting to feel themselves a little bit here. They're chasing the ball. They're making City pass it all the way back to Ederson under pressure. The ball is going sideways, and then out of nowhere, Kevin De Bruyne shows up on the left side to help out Ake to just kind of be an option for someone to pass to. And then Valverde runs out, sprints, leaves that right channel, and runs to Kevin De Bruyne. And then basically Gvardiol is able to Gvardiol also makes a run towards the touchline as well, running away from Rodrigo. And Kevin De Bruyne is able to get the ball away, and before Valverde can catch him, finds Gvardiol, who Gvardiol then turns around from Rodrigo, and then he sees just the left wing space completely free. Valverde again has left it, and then Holland is making a run towards that, and then Holland does a pretty good job to collect it, and then he waits for help, and he finds Grealish. And then Grealish does pretty well here as well, where he's able to kind of see what his options are. And then in the meantime, and just in the background, you just see Gvardiol out of nowhere, just this freight train coming. After Gvardiol plays the ball to Holland, you see him immediately get on his bike, and he's sprinting. And he's doing it in a spot where just no one's following him. Rodrigo's not following him. Jude or Ceballos, they or Camavinga, they miss it as well. And I think Jack Grealish actually sees Gvardiol running, and I think the actual cross is meant for Gvardiol, not really Holland. But Holland's also in behind as well. And what happens is Grealish just plays an inch-perfect pass, and he floats it over the young center back Asensio, and it finds Gvardiol, and then he basically chests it down, and then Holland is right there next to him, and Holland then controls it, and he's able to find the finish as well. They looked at this forever for it to be offsides. To me, it's one of those where, to the naked eye, if anything else, Holland is basically even with the ball. Uh, but they looked at it. They looked at they even have offsides technology, sideline technology. But it counted, and it came a little bit against the run of play. It's one of those goals where I feel like, yeah, Madrid probably could have done better. Valverde didn't have to run at Kevin De Bruyne to go all the way upfield because it's like the 15th minute or so in the game. At this point, though, they probably feel like they have the game in hand, so they can exert some pressure anywhere they want, and they get a little bit caught by it. But it's brilliant finishing and creative play by Jack Grealish, someone that sometimes I kind of go against. We've rarely seen him this whole season, and then a few minutes later, you see why. You see why we haven't seen Jack Grealish all season, and just a few minutes after the goal, you see him struggling. And then there's few minutes later after that, you see he has to do a sprint and he really can't do it. And then City have a goal kick and then he goes down and he has to go off. And then Phil Foden comes on. That moves Savio back to the left side. And Savio wasn't nearly as effective dictating the play on the rest of the side on that side. And Foden, quite honestly, wasn't either, even though Foden was able to draw the PK later on. But what happened was Foden and Kevin De Bruyne had to play on the same side with each other and they ended up kind of clashing with each other as well. But after that, Real Madrid have this great start, and then Man City kind of score out of nowhere, and then you start to see basically a few moments here and there where Man City or Real Madrid is still able to have some kind of attack, but it's very isolated. You start to see Vinny, Mbappe, Rodrigo kind of looking to play individually. Vinny kind of clips the post out of nothing, shortly after that, but you start to see them just kind of lose grip control of the game. And what happens is Man City's kind of structure in the beginning, with they're talking about how Guardiola's playing a little bit more inside. You have a Kanji that's also inside. Uh, you start to see them really start to kind of control the ball a little bit, and you start to see John Stones just take the game over. So you're starting to see Real Madrid struggle just to turn City over. And as the first half goes on, you're starting to see how they're using John Stones in midfield, and it feels like every single time, in a weird way, I don't really like using fullbacks this way, but in this kind of game, it worked out. With Gvardiol and Akanji kind of tucking inside because they were forming basically a midfield three with Stones centrally, and you have a Diaz and Ake, so you have the two center backs, and you have basically the three in midfield. And again, this was okay in the first half. In the second half, not didn't work out nearly as well. But what they were able to do, and this is happening over and over again, was they were able to exploit Vinny and Mbappe because they keep losing John Stones. So you have Vinny and Mbappe as the two, and they're trying to run at Diaz and Akanji or Diaz and Ake when they have the ball. And what was happening is just too often or not, John Stones would pop up and he would just be the third man versus the two, and it was happening over and over again. And Camavinga uh, wasn't able to mark John Stones, and Danny Ceballos wasn't either. Danny Ceballos was a little bit more concerned about Man City being able to play Holland in. It seemed like, and Camavinga had to just if Camavinga did run to John Stones, you always had Gvardiol that was open. So it was a frustrating 30 or so minutes, or I don't know, 20 or so minutes for Real Madrid. I feel like you could possibly do a little bit better with Ceballos, maybe trying to be a little bit push a little bit higher up. But again, he was trying to block the passing lanes in Holland. So it was a good trick, good tactic tweak by Pep, and it helped them kind of carry the lead out into the to halftime. So I mean, Stones at one point was just touching the ball every 30 seconds. It felt like it felt like he was given the Rodri role, essentially, and said he keep using him to recycle things. And Real Madrid never make an adjustment. And just at this point, they're just able to just slowly move upfield. And Real Madrid now are forced into a lot of late clearances, and they can't get hold of the ball. And at this point, Camavinga picks a very bad time to have probably the worst 20 minutes of his season, where he starts to just play late passes in behind. Gvardiol is starting to run and intercept it. Suddenly, City are the team that are winning the ball back high in the attacking third, and that's allowing City to keep the ball as well. And then there's moments shortly after that where Kevin De Bruyne is able to make a run in behind. Found by John Stones. The cross comes in, but it's blocked off. But here you start to see the chances actually come from that control. You have a Foden shot, it forces Courtois to have some glove saves on it. You have a Holland shot close in the box that comes from a Camavinga turnover. A big block by Asensio here, who I thought played a relatively decent game for the youngster. And then on the ensuring corner kick, you have Akanji having or it's Ake having a header that clips the bar. Gvardiol was there possibly as well. So you started to feel like, if anything, Real Madrid have lost control of the game, and how are they going to get back? And then it comes from a long ball, and then out of nowhere, the last 5 minutes or so of the game, they wake up and it's basically an onslaught. So it just comes from just there's a long ball by Valverde, and it's a flick on header, and there's a poor touch by Ake, and then from there, Real Madrid just able to find life, able to get upfield quickly, and City again can't handle Rodrigo in the box. Rodrigo has all these options here. It's maybe a poor pass into Vinny, leads to a corner kick, but it's consequential because Akanji blocking it does his groin in, I think. Uh, and basically it leads to a Valverde shot, just goes over the bar. But then there's a Courtois long ball later on where Vinny looks to be in behind. He finds Mbappe, who is able to get a shot off, but that's clipped and maybe deflects over just barely. And then Mbappe again has a poor shot over the bar, found by Rodrigo. So you're starting to see, there are 3 or 4 chances as the half ended where Real Madrid actually started to cook a little bit. So and that comes at a moment where City can't really clear the ball and can't really a single 50-50 to save their lives, and it's Foden and Kevin De Bruyne, especially. And, again, Mbappe on a different day probably buries a couple of these. So you're starting to see at least how that half ended. City or Real Madrid's left side starts to really work, and Man City's right side doesn't. You're starting to see Foden nowhere near being able to help defensively. You're seeing Jude start to make some clever runs from that side centrally, and that's dragging Diaz to maybe run with him, and that's leaving Mbappe wide open for a couple of these. And again, on a different day, he blasts it over, but on a different day, he probably does score this. So you get to halftime. Madrid had moments, but it was a mess for a lot of this. City had the game under control, but that said, it wasn't really like Man City were that threatening for a second. There was one moment with Holland where you needed a pretty good block, but other than that, there were a lot of half chances basically. So it felt like, if anything, maybe Real Madrid could get back in it. It didn't feel like we were going to get the second half that we got though. Uh, but you did just wonder, because of the way the second half ended or the first half ended, what would happen if you were able to slip Vinny and Mbappe in behind. But for Man City, yeah, the Stone midfield experiment was not only successful, it was completely dictating how City can control the game. He keeps popping up as a third man for combination plays. It wasn't necessarily leading to looks per se, but it was basically suffocating the game. Uh, but again, you have to be worried if you're a City fan, because you control the game for 35 minutes or so, and then just in a flash, Madrid can just pounce and attack on a mistake. And you can, and in a weird way, it's a way that Man City can't do. They're not built to do the same things. But again, the shape was two at two and a three in front. Uh, and the interesting thing is City were able to kind of use the wings to open up Real Madrid, kind of threading the ball with midfields. Where I think the idea was for City to kind of use Stones and then the two fullbacks to play next to him. And I think what the idea was is you have ideally, it was supposed to be Foden keeping width on one side, or it would be Savinho and then Grealish keeping width on the other side. And it seemed like the idea was to then have your midfield eights, Kevin De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva, who usually Bernardo Silva is usually playing next to whoever's the number 6 in Man City's field. Here, he almost had a free will and he was playing more advanced. And it seemed like the idea was to give basically you get to a spot where you have Bernardo Silva and Savio, or Kevin De Bruyne and Foden basically in a 2v1 situation against the Real Madrid fullback. But it wasn't necessarily materializing because they weren't able to keep the width. And it got to a point in the second half where Valverde just didn't really fear either Bernardo Silva or Savio. And he was able to just kind of stick basically marking one by marking both. And it felt like Mendy didn't really have an issue on his side either. So it seemed like the idea was for Kevin De Bruyne and Silva to almost be used as decoys to maybe draw the fullbacks out of position, to get those wingers open, to get them in behind. Maybe you can get something going that way. And it just felt like Madrid's fix was just kind of to ignore them, ignore Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne, which is kind of weird to say. So it felt like that was maybe a small adjustment that we saw, and we saw some other adjustments as well. So we get to the second half. And again, the story for them, for Man City, is how you have injuries. You have these, it starts off with Grealish having to come off, and then Rico Lewis comes in for Kanji, and again, just very very shortly after that, you start to see Vidi start to enjoy some fun because of this. But you also see early on, you do see a bit of a tactic change with Jude Bellingham. So he starts off playing centrally, but I think as the half went on, I think what he really was is he was just marking Rico Lewis. But it was made easy for him because Phil Foden again is not sticking on the wing like he's supposed to. He keeps leaving that spot, and that wouldn't be an issue if you had Rico Lewis also staying wide as a fullback. But Rico Lewis is playing inverted as well. So what Real Madrid were doing is they were just giving up width. So the width had to come from Kevin De Bruyne, and you can see where the issue is from that. That's not the best way to play Kevin De Bruyne, and it gets to a point where they kind of just basically cancel each other out, and it played into Real Madrid's, both Real Madrid, when they had the ball and when Real Madrid didn't have the ball, basically. So that's a change as well, and I think the other change was you see Vinny and Mbappe kind of float a little bit more, where one maybe drops, the other one stays high. One maybe goes out wide, the other one stays centrally. It wasn't necessarily like Vinny was only sticking on the wing or Mbappe was only still playing through the middle. You saw Mbappe actually going out left a lot, but you saw Finney, he's trying to do as good a job as he possible to stay centrally. You're starting to see them somewhat click a little bit together. Rodrigo continues to be a little bit hit and miss because it seems he wants to float and he wants to always kind of be a little bit more in that kind of left central half space as well. Rodrigo did have a good game, or at least he did have moments to be fair to him. But it feels like that is the one that is kind of the outsider here. But at least you're starting to see Vinny and Mbappe start to find each other, start to have some pretty good chemistry. Uh, so, anyways, we get to the second half, and one of the lone kind of few chances for Man City. You have Holland. It's a shot that basically clips the bar. It comes out of nowhere. I think it's one of the moments where Asensio plays does poor to it's either him or Mendy that basically gets caught trying to do a little too much and loses the ball, and basically Foden or Kevin De Bruyne. One of the few times I think it's Kevin De Bruyne that's able to find Holland in the box, and he does really really well to get the shot off, and it hits the post. And you thought, okay, well, City are actually started on fire. Maybe Real Madrid are going to be the team that's going to be under the foot, and that lasted like 5 minutes max. So we start to get some chances here. Vinny basically takes on Rico Lewis, cross to Jude, header just wide. But here, Madrid just go upfield. Jude sees Valverde doing an overlap. Rodrigo, Gvardiol is caught here, and the ball basically eventually gets it up. Gets it upfield, and then basically Real Madrid kind of sideways pass it to the other side of the field, where Vinny takes on Rico Lewis again, gets to the byline with no issues. Pretty nice cross in, and just Jude Bellingham just kind of heads it wide. But the move starts here with you start to see a little clever combination play, quick feet by Ceballos and Bellingham to try to get through Man City and try to impress on them. What they do, it starts with Kevin De Bruyne trying to long ball to Holland, and it doesn't come off. And then Tchouaméni is able to head it away, and then basically Real Madrid, retake the ball, and then it leads to a pretty good Jude chance. But it's just a start for Man City where they start to just being overrun essentially. And what happens is Ceballos and Camavinga come to life and start to actually run the game. Ceballos especially starts to find the ball a lot more in the second half. He keeps dropping deeper. As I'm saying, Mendy is pushing upfield, and it's almost like a decoy. And the idea is just kind of move Ceballos into that kind of fullback space. And Man City were not able to follow it and not able to stick anyone on it, whether it was Kevin De Bruyne or Foden. They didn't recognize you need to actually stick with Ceballos when you go here because they were using him to just kind of run everything because he gets the ball there, but he wouldn't stay there. Then he would carry it upfield, and again he'd be able to carry it into lots of empty space because again Foden and Kevin De Bruyne are just nowhere, and you saw this happening a whole lot too. So now you're able to get past a couple lines without even really passing the ball just by a little clever control, and then from there they can start to kind of spray it left and right, and they were doing that a lot too. So you start to see it build up a little bit differently. You start to see Courtois not just going long all the time. You're actually starting to see him, taking some time, being composed. You're starting to see Chouameni start to find some feet. You're starting to see Camavinga come to life and starting to spray it a little bit better and not necessarily losing it. So they recognized early on that City's weak side was Foden, Kevin De Bruyne, and Enrico Lewis, and the knock-on effect also is because again, Ceballos is able to get to the ball, able to advance with it. Bellingham now is able to find himself free, and it seemed like City were never able to get close enough to stop Bellingham or Danny Ceballos, just finding ways to get him the ball more, and you start to see Bellingham take over, and you start to see the chances come for Real Madrid. So you have a Rodrigo cross that finds Mbappe, decent Ederson save, so another Ederson save. It's even, but here even loose passes. So I think it's Vinny gets the ball on the left, and he plays what should have been a poor pass. It should be maybe a. It looks like he's trying to play Jude Bellingham, and he's overhit it, and basically it looks like it's a loose ball in the middle of the field, but then Ceballos or someone's able to run onto it where there's no one in Man City to help with this. I think it's Kevin De Bruyne or Foden that it's trying to get there, or it might be Bernardo Silva who's trying to get there, and he just doesn't have the legs to do it. So even loose passes aren't being punished, and you start to see Madrid get to start to win every 50-50 duel. You'll start to see even like poor passes. Madrid don't have to be perfect to control the game and to dominate the game. You're starting to get contest 50-50s, but also win the 50-50s like uncontested. You start to see Real Madrid have legs to get to these loose balls, and Man City don't. You're starting to see that everywhere. Uh, and every time Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne, and Foden are late to close down the spaces. So that's hurting. And because of that, Camavinga and again Ceballos were able to really benefit that as well as Jude Bellingham. And then we have a couple of other chances. So we have another Ceballos long ball finds Rodrigo, who has a flick, finds Mbappe in behind. Big Gvardiol stop. Mbappe looks like he's going to be in on goal. It's another one of those just one little flick, and Mbappe is he's able to time a run. He's not offsides, and he looks like he's sprinting into the box. And Gvardiol actually does amazing to stop him. If Man City had gotten some kind of a result here, probably John Stones would have been man of the match, but Gvardiol would have been a pretty good candidate as well. Not just for helping for the first goal, but he actually did do. He did have some decent recovery. This probably stopped a goal just by itself, and there were a couple of others as well. Then the funny thing is, after this, there's a rare time where City is actually able to counter, and again, it's one of those where they get the ball upfield. I think Kevin De Bruyne gets it into the box. They're looking for Holland. Holland gets it. Holland then tries to recycle it, and the ball finds it's either Gvardiol or the ball finds Bernardo Silva or Savinho. And what happens is they maybe try to take someone on, and Camavinga basically goes to the ground and picks the ball off him. And then from there, Man City or Real Madrid are able to go upfield with Rodrigo. Eventually, the ball ends up finding Ceballos, and Ceballos is able to basically bait Bernardo Silva, and they're able to draw a free kick, and basically Real Madrid score just on the free kick. And it's not the free kick itself. The free kick actually smacks the wall. It's not really that good, but the rebound finds Dani Ceballos, who again then is able to just first time float it into just back into the box, and it's the perfect weight on it. Finds Mbappe in behind, and Mbappe again completely mishits this, but he misses it in such a way Ederson is maybe dumbfounded. I don't know. The ball is able to slowly spin into the net. I can't really fault Ederson for that. It's hard to really fault Real Madrid for that. It's an inch perfect pass by Dani Ceballos where Real Madrid get lucky. It's not a free kick that should have been rewarded with a second chance, and it is. But after that, Pep sees that he doesn't feel like things are really working out, so he makes another change. Maybe this had to happen, but Nathan Ake comes off for Mateo Kovacic, former Real Madrid player, and what it does is it moves John Stones back into center back with Ruben Diaz, and so this made City worse in possession because Kovacic wasn't able to do what John Stones was doing, dictating the game, and by Stones moving him further back, he's not able to dictate the game either, and also you're a little bit more vulnerable to these runs in behind. And the thing that's very odd to me is after this switch, you still see Man City playing a relatively high defensive line, and even the commentators were talking about it. You see, and what I mean by high is you see. Ruben Diaz and John Stones kind of just standing out of possession, or out of possession in defense, close to the halfway line, close to the to the midway marker. So you figured eventually, if Real Madrid just win the ball back, all it takes is just a ball over the top, just it floated for those pacey attackers to take advantage of. And we see a couple of chances even before. So I mean, it's still a 1-1 game here, and you figure if anything, Real Madrid are going to get second. So we have a Valverde shot that just misses wide. So Madrid again just are able to play poor passes and still keep the ball. So here, Asensio is able to dribble away from pressure from Kevin De Bruyne, who again looks like a statue at this point. A pass finds Mbappe. He's trying to find Vinny centrally. That's blocked. But the rebound finds Bellingham, who's able to play it back to Mbappe, who finds himself on the left more in the second half. But here, Mbappe is able to get upfield and just he has a cross. That eventually, it goes to no one. Valverde is making a run back post, and he meets the ball, and it's just the shot just misses wide. This would have been a pretty nice goal had it gone in. And then we have the big chance here where Valverde has a cross from the far side of the left, and it finds Bellingham, and it's another big Edison save. So just two switches of the ball here. Madrid were able to just get 5 yards from goal. So Jude it basically runs by Rico Lewis like he's not really there. It's an unbelievable ball from the other side of the field by Valverde. Is able to angle it into the box, finds Jude Bellingham's run, inch perfect. But also Danny Ceballos starts us off with a little carry into the space, and then he finds Valverde. So you're starting to see just City are getting destroyed at this point. They're maybe used to teams not playing with width, and just Real Madrid with Vinny and Mbappe are just the team that are maybe ill-equipped to play through the middle, but love playing out wide, love these wide channels. So it's also a team that's built to run and ball carry, not just pass and recycle the ball. And it just felt like Man City just didn't really know what they were facing in that second half. Uh, and they were able to handle it mostly in the first half, but they were able to do that because they were limiting how long Madrid had the ball. They were able to press Courtois in the beginning. Courtois was going long, and they were able to, there would be kind of empty possessions that way. You're able to get Camavinga to maybe turn the ball over in that first half. It felt like City had better legs to make runs themselves and to press higher, where maybe easy passing decisions would be available. Where in the second half, that stopped. City just immediately started turning the ball back over. When City were getting the ball, they would look up, and you wouldn't have really an option. Look, Holland would be marked, and you don't see Kevin De Bruyne or Phil Foden or Savinho making runs ahead. And it just seemed like the legs, just as the game went on, just started dying, and you started to wonder what really could Pep do to kind of change this. So I did feel like injuries are one thing, but the changes he made them worse off. Moving John Stones to center back and having to play Rico Lewis, it wasn't. You miss John Stones being able to dictate things, and in the second half, it just felt like Kevin De Bruyne and Foden again were clashing into each other. The legs of Bernardo Silva, as well, just it's not there. But that said, you get to a point where you find yourself actually leading the game at 2-1 again. Uh, and it comes again from the run of play. It's very similar to the first half. Rico Lewis does well here. He collects the ball and then quickly fires it from his feet. He finds Phil Foden, and then Foden finally takes someone on. He takes on Mendy, beats Mendy, and then basically him and Danny Ceballos knock knees together on the penalty line. It is the right call, and then Holland buries it. And then you have more changes. You have Luka Modric comes on for Danny Ceballos, so he's on. Danny Ceballos is unlucky here. He was really fantastic, to be honest. Probably the only thing people are going to remember is him giving away the PK. But then you see Brahim Diaz come on for Rodrigo. You also see Kevin De Bruyne come off and Savio come off for Marmoush and Gundogan. And I feel like this probably would have been a good change if it would have happened maybe earlier in the game. And it's kind of weird how it happens when you have a lead at this point. Uh, I don't necessarily think, Gundogan, changing, would have changed that much because he was supposed to kinda give a little bit more protection to Kovacic, and it's not like Man City or it's not like Real Madrid, played through, Man City's middle. So I don't necessarily know how much the Gundogan change was that bad. Marmoush maybe could have, done a little bit better, defensively, but, basically what happens is, Ederson just completely loses his head. So you get to a point where Madrid have just had an attack. They're able to go upfield again, and it's one of those where Brahim Diaz has the ball and he does that overlap kind of run, or that someone does an overlap over on him, and he's trying to thread the ball in, and it just basically it's going out of play. And Ederson has the ball, and then he tries to do a drop kick and maybe fails at it, and basically kicks the ball right at Bellingham 30 yards away from goal. And then from there, Bellingham just able to, win the 50-50. He's able to head the ball, and then he's able to play it to Brahim Diaz, who looks and has Vinny ahead of him and threads the ball in the box, and then Vinny just has a pop from the angle. I don't think Vinny's expecting to score. But Ederson just weirdly he spills it in a way that's weird as well. It's almost like he doesn't use his hands. And maybe he's just surprised by how quickly the shot comes off, but it hits him in the square in the chest, and then from there, Brahim Diaz is able to get on the rebound. But I think Kovacic, it's Kovacic. Kovacic is late to react. If he switched on, I think he's able to box Diaz out, almost like basketball style. Uh, but because when the shot comes, Kovacic is in front of Brahim Diaz, and I think he's probably a bigger player. He's just late to respond, and then Diaz is able to get onto it, and then lo and behold, that wasn't the end of it. It gets worse with Jude Bellingham at the very end, and again, Mbappe has been subbed off at this point, for a left back, so it's not Carlo Ancelotti is going for the win here. So just Mendy just launches it long. Jude wins the first header. Kovacic gets on the loose ball and he tries to flick something backwards to Rico Lewis. I don't understand why. This is like the Pep thing. Maybe just try to keep the ball, I guess. But just anything is better than this. Boot it. Keep it. Do anything. Kick it back to Ederson, I guess. Anything's better than this. But I think there are other mistakes here as well. So Rico Lewis decides to go for this ball. And he has to understand this is a 50-50, and if you miss it and if you allow Vidi to get behind you, you're done. And Rico Lewis is not someone that Man City need to have to get past Real Madrid for the second game. Not to downplay his involvement, but it just feels like he's not the most important player on the. It's not like a Holland. It's not like a Foden or John Stones. I think Rico Lewis needs to just take one for the team here and tackle Vinny before he can get to the ball, basketball style or NFL style. But box him out, eat the red card here. Now, maybe that's a little bit harsh because it's all happening, at lightning speed, and maybe he's not able to think of it that way. But you, once the ball bounces towards you from Kovacic, you have to figure this is bad. And he's not able to. He goes for the 50-50, and he's not able to get it. Vinny is quicker to him. I mean, it's lightning quick reaction by Vinny Jr. And then Ederson runs out to him, and he's in no man's land. And then Vinny at this point has options, and he basically tries to flick it over Ederson. He gets the flick right. The ball is going wide, but maybe he means it or not. But it doesn't matter because Jude Bellingham is making the run to join in, and basically it's gotten to a point where Jude has run past John Stones, and John Stones he starts maybe 8 yards in front of Jude Bellingham when this happens. When Vinny is getting onto the ball, or when Kovacic plays it back to Rico Lewis and Vinny gets onto it, John Stones has a pretty good cushion ahead of Jude Bellingham. And he's just a statue. He's just way too late to react, and it's not even like Bellingham is making a sprint. He's just kind of slowly going along, and then when he sees Vinny isn't on goal, then he gets on his bike. You feel like John Stones could also possibly block Jude Bellingham out, and maybe that would only be a yellow. Even if it's a red, but it doesn't happen. And Bellingham, because he makes that run, because he wants it more than. I don't necessarily know if I like saying that, but it is a endeavor at this point. If Vinny doesn't react as quick as he does, and if Jude Bellingham doesn't react as quick as he does, the goal doesn't happen, and they don't have a goal lead going into the Bernabeu. So you have to reward the effort. You do. So this is so like I said, this. Normally it's a pretty good game, and it ended up being a pretty good game as well. The goals weren't necessarily great, but it did give us drama. It normally does. But again, the way that Man City went about this was a bit weird. It just Real Madrid again are the perfect team to hit Pep the most. Again, just Man City usually don't like playing with width. They just played a game with Arsenal where Arsenal didn't play with width, so they just figured maybe they could do the same kind of thing, and that did not work out. The other thing too is, in the second half, the lack of ball pressure, and you're still playing a highish back line. It seemed that we were just playing with fire, and they were. I mean, 20 shots, 8 on target, 11 and 4 for Man City, 6 big chances for Real Madrid. They have less possession, but it doesn't really matter because they have the majority of the chances. And to stick with Real Madrid, see how we're doing for time. I figured it would be a little bit long, and it is. Uh, so I mean, this is what they are. I mean, outplayed. This is what they've always been under Ancelotti. Outplayed, but still they find a way to escape danger at every turn. At least as long as Angelo Carlo Ancelotti has been manager. It does feel like they were maybe fortunate with how with the subs that Pep brought on. Some were forced, but again, not everyone was. And I feel like it was the people that were brought on were ill suited to handle their counterpart in a serious duel, and that really did happen. This was the time to get them. You have Asensio and Chouameni at center back. Chouameni just did not have and played a few games now in Spain where he hasn't had the best time of it. Uh, you don't have someone like Rudiger. You have this young kid Asensio, frankly, both managed it pretty easily. Holland scores, but for the most part, Holland gets two, but with the PK, Holland for the most part really wasn't that impactful. Some of that is on them, doing a decent job, but a lot of it really was they were able to stop the supply to him. But really, the other thing to talk about was Jude and Camavinga had yellow cards coming into this, and they don't pick up a second. The second yellow would have meant suspension. So Real Madrid are going to basically have all their players back for the second leg, possibly have Rudiger too, possibly have Lucas Vasquez, which would I think that would be a mistake to play him. I actually think Valverde did a really good job on just that right side. Or so that could be maybe be the one thing where Ancelotti maybe could mess this up if he goes to Vasquez again. But we'll have to see. But speaking of the tactics, again, just Camavinga, Jude, and Ceballos just completely changed the game in their favor. They take it over with their control, with their dual winning. Each had a different role to play. Camavinga winning the ball back. Ceballos, running backwards, really deep to receive the ball where Man City weren't able to follow it. And then just Jude was all over. Jude would be on the left side through the middle. Jude would be making runs on the right. Jude would be making runs ahead. It just felt like he had maybe a bit of more of a free will where no one on Man City was able to stick with him. And even when someone was close to him, whether it was Foden or Kevin De Bruyne or whoever, they weren't able to handle Jude in a 1v1 kind of physical duel. Jude was winning that over and over again. The other thing, too, is Camavinga. I thought either him or just Real Madrid's team did a much better job at being closer when John Stones was receiving the ball. It wasn't necessarily like they were shadowing him man to man, but John Stones did not have the time that he had in the first half before John Stones was moved back into center back. You see him in the first few minutes of the second half. John Stones is receiving the ball and immediately Camavinga is able to run and bend his run and to at least be near him. And it actually led to John Stones actually misplaying a couple passes. So I felt like they recognized, hey, we can't let this guy just completely receive the ball freely. If he's going to beat us under pressure, good for him. But at least get someone near him. Felt like they were doing a better job with that. And Mendy's positioning allowed Ceballos to drop in and receive in that build-up. That was a big moment as well. Mbappe and Vinny changing as well. Some other things to talk about. Again, one player that just kind of showed up a little bit more in the second half was Fede Valverde. And again, I think it'd be a mistake if he doesn't start in the second half. Actually, I really did like him actually on the wing, basically on the right. I haven't loved him when he's played through the middle. So I think play Ceballos and play Camavinga and just see how it goes. And the only thing to talk about here is the way that they were able to really kind of just ignore City kind of playing in those wide spaces. If Man City could find a way to play with width, and with directness and pace, I do feel like you could punish this Madrid side. That all that being said, Fernan Mendy to me, obviously, Foden showed he can be got at, but also for that first half is Man City. It's Vinny and Mbappe not being the best out of possession. Rodrigo sometimes doesn't really know who to mark. Jude Bellingham more often than not in that first half was further away further away, basically on the left touch line than not. And it seemed like his role was a little bit different, at least somewhat. Some of that might have just been Akanji being able to stay out there, and then Rico Lewis coming inside, kind of screwed you. So maybe don't play Rico Lewis, play someone else. And that when I get to Man City, that'll be kind of the things that I focus on. But the other thing too is this isn't the most impenetrable Real Madrid side, the Spanish sides throughout the year have shown if you just play with fullbacks wide and you sit in a deep block, you can frustrate them. They don't they don't have a traditional striker. Eventually Mbappe and Vinny get annoyed and they make mistakes. They try to do too much, but again, Pep doesn't really like playing his fullbacks traditionally. He likes apparently playing his center backs near the high halfway line. That's not really great, and he likes just having the ball. He doesn't really like having the transition threat. I feel like if Man City are going to advance, they're going to have to do it. And the weird thing is, so they didn't show they could do it for Arsenal, but they did show they could do it for Chelsea. Now Chelsea aren't the best example because, uh, um, their back line with Colwell and Chalobah is a bit of a mess. Their whole team is a bit of a mess. Chelsea in that game, they weren't able to mark or to press high. Arsenal were able to do it a little bit differently. Real Madrid, weirdly enough, aren't really the best pressing side either. So I think if they look up, if they try to push it, you can probably get to a point where you can frustrate the Real Madrid side, where they will kind of sit back. They will try to play for the counter. Um, maybe you can instead of that, maybe try to find a way to. Sh maybe try to, flip that a little bit. Make them allow them to have the ball, basically, and try to basically hit them on the break instead. But to do that requires you having to change it up a little bit. So, yes, Ederson is a scapegoat for the goals. He coulda do b yeah, obviously, he can do better, but Rico Lewis coming on was not the best, thing, versus, Vinny Jr. And the other thing is the story of their season has been having leads in second halves and then giving them up. There was Man United that had happened. It was PSG that happened recently. I think Brighton was another one they had a lead in. There was a game versus Feyenoord in the Champions League. They gave up 3 goals in like 15 minutes. It happens over and over again. Is there a way to kind of change this up? So you have Stones doing what he was doing in the first half for the second half. That changes things. The right side was dreadful all game really, but especially the second half. If anything, Pep needs to figure out how to change that. That's what I would immediately do. So immediately, my first fix is play Savio on the right side, like you started the game with. I think he, if nothing else, can stay on the right side. Weirdly enough, I would like to find a way to get to Gvardiol actually offering you your width on the left. But to do that, you have to worry. You're going to worry about playing the fullback higher because of the counter threat. Uh, but in my opinion, you can fix that a little bit by playing a different kind of defender. So I'll get to that as well. But here, Bernardo Silva's role is a bit confusing. That's another note I have. So it seemed like the idea again was to have you have the people on the touchline. So you have Savio and Grealish, and they're staying wide. And eventually, you have Stones just kind of by himself, but he still has the people close to him if needed. And I think the idea was to try to get the midfield eights, whether it was Kevin De Bruyne or Bernardo Silva, to just kind of tuck in and to be in a spot where you're in behind Camavinga or Ceballos, but you're kind of in between the fullback on Real Madrid. And the idea was to give that fullback a 2v1 kind of nightmare. And this would work if you had real pace and you had real threats in those channels. Man City didn't have it in this game. You possibly could have it with a different kind of tweak, and so that'll be something too that I get to a little bit later on. Haaland did what he's supposed to do, but at the same, he scores when the ball finds him. But out of possession, he's starting to be a little bit of a statue, so that could be a bit of a problem. But here, the negatives is Kevin De Bruyne. His physically, yeah, he looks done. I keep wondering why he doesn't play more. Maybe we're getting answers why. But also Phil Foden offers very little on the right. If you're gonna play Phil Foden, you've got to play him in a 3 role. You got to play him as a cam. That way, because you're gonna play in the middle anyways, and that way you're not sacrificing that side. So I would probably do Savio and then Foden through the middle, and then I would do Marmoush, Omar Marmoush, like we saw versus Chelsea. And yes, Marmoush doesn't always stay on the touchline, but you could get that width from Gvardiol. And the other thing that I think you could do, because I don't think you can do The back line needs legs. It needs help. I would play that Kushinoff guy. Possibly, I would play that Victor Reis guy. Maybe that would be too much, but I would play the Kushinoff guy either next to John Stones or even play him at right back because he has the pace. He has the legs and he has the light bulb to go challenge, to go run at danger because he's not worried about people running behind him because he's got a motor on him as well. He needs to be your security blanket. He's your new Kyle Walker. He's your new someone that puts out fires essentially. Now we haven't really seen him other than that Chelsea game, and he did make a mistake. So would he make a mistake at the Bernabeu? You might have to risk it. That's something I would think of. I wouldn't do Bernardo Silva. I wouldn't do Kovacic. They offered very, very little. You brought in someone that was Nico Gonzalez. You brought in someone that was expensive from Porto. Uh, he only got a few minutes in the FA Cup game. Again, it's hard to ask him to immediately come in and perform for you at the Bernabeu. But Pep's system for his control stuff to work, it's got to have a focal point. It's got to have a pivot point. It's got to have a number six that can do both. That can do the defensive stuff, the duel winning, but it can also be amazing at being able to receive the ball under pressure on a turn and be able to quickly get it out of his feet. Not easy to do that. Now, I've only seen him in clips. I haven't actually seen him in a game. Uh, at Porto, it seemed like he could do this. So maybe you run with him. He's also 6'2". He's got the body to it. So maybe you could do Nico Gonzalez and John Stones together, and that could be that could be your midfield. And then you have the Kushinoff, and you have to see what will happen as far as who will be available for your back line. But there needs to be a little bit of a roster, a little bit of a roster surgery here because the city's out of possession just was really really poor. They weren't able to press into any kind of mistakes. They weren't able, and in possession, they didn't have any options ahead. You can't just use Holland. So is this inevitable? Why is it so differently? I do think, weirdly enough, though, the one thing that I normally like seeing is the one thing that kind of was their downfall. They weren't set up to lose the ball, and they started taking way too many risks in the second half, and that they started losing the ball. Uh, again, and all you're doing is all it does here is you're giving possessions back to Madrid, where again. It was happening. They're allowed to actually recycle, and they're allowed to actually get on the ball a little bit more. And weirdly enough, it was Kevin De Bruyne that was just he kept doing this, and Foden as well. So I would probably do. Here's what my mock up was: you got to have legs and you got to have a width. So Kushinov, I just put center back because I don't really know. Maybe you could do Stones and Diaz, and then Gvardiol, and that's kind of your back line, and then you can move Gvardiol into either centrally or you can move him out wide. I have Savio, Nico, Stones, and Doku, and then Holland and Marmoush. So I don't have Foden. You can maybe play Marmoush instead of Doku if you have Gvardiol being able to offer you with head. So you could basically have a back three of Kushinov, Stones, and Diaz, with Gvardiol being the one that offers you width. If you have your width, you have Marmoush that can make those runs into the channels. Marmoush and Holland kind of playing together. You could do this with Nico Gonzalez, and if John Stones is playing in the back, maybe you can find a way to get more out of Bernardo Silva or Gundogan. We didn't really see Gundogan much. I feel like Gundogan is a better player at this point, but who knows? Bernardo Silva, played in this game, but I didn't really like his role. He played in that Chelsea game and he was fine. Chelsea is not Real Madrid, but that's just kind of the way I'm thinking about it. Savio on the right. If Foden's going to play, Foden's got to play through the middle. He can't. I don't think you can ask him to play on the right because he leaves that spot anyways. And I think you're getting exposed every single time. You're not going to have Kushinoff ask. You're not going to ask Kushinoff to make any kind of forward runs. You're not going to ask him to offer you width. You're going to ask him to basically again be your security blanket. Cut off danger, especially on that side when you have Vinny and you have Mbappe that like making runs on that side. So that's possibly what I would do. And then what matters here is the Ake and Akanji health. We have to see if they're able to go. We have to see if Stones will be able to go. We'll have to see if Nico Gonzalez is good to go because he's still day to day apparently as well. But you have made a couple signings early this January. I think he's got to risk it and play him. We'll see if he does or not. Um, but I think you got to find a way to maybe sit in a little bit more. You got to find a way to kind of draw Madrid onto you in kind of a false sense, and find a way to exploit. Find a way to exploit. Maybe if Valverde is played a really good game, but again he's not a traditional fullback. Find a way to exploit Mendy. Find a way to exploit that center back pairing. You can't do it with Foden, Kevin De Bruyne, and Bernardo Silva, types that can't run. You got to have people that'll be able to run for you. And so that is where we are for that game. See how we're doing for time. And then I'm not going to spend that much time on Liverpool and Everton. Good. I've got some time here. So it ends 2-2. There again, there's little action to actually talk about. The most things are the reffing calls. The first goal by Beto. I mean, the only thing to talk about here is I didn't think should have been a free kick, but fair play. It's a clever free kick. Beto does well to bend his run. He does it. He's able to run basically in front of Kanate, but he also bends it where he's still onside. It's a clever run, and then it's also a composed finish. Composed finish by Beto. Uh, it's a couple goals, a couple games in a row that Beto is able to score. Now for Everton, we were without Calvert Lewin, and no one knew what David Moyes would be able to do to find some goals, and he's turned around and found made Beto into a composed finisher. This is he makes a brilliant run, but he also Allison's coming at him, and he's able to find the net. But like the mentioned how the free kick, I don't think it should have been given. Everton got a lot of free kicks. They got 20 in this game versus Liverpool's 8, which is a little bit odd. But it and I thought, well, the worst thing you could do is concede early because Everton just going to sit back, and then Liverpool actually get one back very quickly thanks to a really nice play by Salah. It's actually they get a free kick and they make a mess of it, but Alexis McAllister is able to actually first stop the ball from going behind him, so he wins the ball back, and then eventually clever play finds Salah out wide, and then cross comes in, and it's one of those where Alexis McAllister makes that run into the box, and because he's making it from midfield, he's not marked in the beginning, and he's able to meet it in the air, and it's a great header, and then nothing happens. There's a good 70 minutes of play where just there's not a lot of action, at least on the Bulls end. All the action really is on Everton's end. I guess I'll talk to that about that a little bit later on, and then we get to after a couple changes, Dorian comes on, Curtis Jones comes on, and they play a role in the second goal where Salah is able to just get on the rebound, and he's able to just get something in with his right foot. It felt like Liverpool were going to escape after not playing at all a good game, and then Tarkowski made it 2-2, 96-ish minute, and the crowd erupts. The fans stormed the field, and this was because again it went from commentators basically crowning Liverpool as the title winners during that game, and then just you looking behind, and now it's only 7. If Arsenal win, it'll be 4, and Liverpool again have some stretch here. Now Arsenal are going to have issues with who are they going to have to score their goals. I think they said something about Mikel Merino being used as a striker for them, which is weird. I don't understand how that'll work. But and maybe it'll be Sterling. Sterling and Trossard. I don't really know. They have Ethan Wenuri, and I don't know who they have after that. With Havertz being out, with Saka being out, but they do have a defense, and they're really good on the set pieces, and so I don't really know how they're going to score to win games, but they can probably get a lot of ugly 3 points to go their way, like they've done. They haven't lost a whole lot this season. So I think the title race could still be on, especially from what I saw in here. Liverpool I think only had 7 shots for say an Everton side that was sitting back and was not really been they've won a couple games on the bounce here, but they haven't been good all season. And this is not at all what I would have expected. It's one thing to lose a game, that's fine, or to drop points. They didn't lose. It feels like they lost. But the manner of which it happened does have me fearing a little bit. Also, this is on the back of losing that FA Cup game where the manager Arne Slot, rested a bunch of players on purpose, and you're wondering how's the reaction going to be from that game, and it wasn't really good. This is one of the worst games that they played all year. So, anyways, we get to the rundown here. Probably the most important thing as far as what happened from an Everton's perspective is they lose Ilian Ndiaye, who had been on fire for them. So I talked about where they're going to get for goals. Ndiaye had been the one that had been providing a lot of the goals, and it looks like a pretty bad injury. He kicks the turf and he does his knee. He had to get stretchered off. There were 5 bookings in that half, 3 on Everton, I think 2 on Liverpool. Loads of fouls, loads of the game pausing. There was no rhythm at all. Uh, I think there was a moment where Idrissa Gueye, on a yellow card, stops Cody Gakpo on a counterattack, and Oliver allowed the advantage. If Gakpo goes down, maybe it would have forced him to think about it. I mean, it's a pretty cynical play by Idrissa Gueye, but they were dreadful. Liverpool at least were, and no Alexander Arnold to start. No Darwin Nunes. You figured, it's a point where Everton are well positioned to stop the ball. Going into Ryan Gravenberch and Alexis. It doesn't. They don't care. They're setting up where they don't care if Van Dijk, Kanate, or Robertson, or even Connor Bradley have the ball. And so that was a lot. What was happening in the first half is Liverpool have the ball kind of the halfway line, and the back four all are just in a line, and they were just passing it side to side because they have no options really ahead of them. They can't get the ball into Alexis McAllister or Grafenberch because there's always someone on Everton there. They can't not able to get it long they're trying to go long, but they're not able to find Salah. They're not able to find Cody Gakpo. They're not able to really get Luis Diaz touches. Luis Diaz is able to get touches, but he's not able to get any touches in the box. And Liverpool went into this game without playing a striker. So you can't go long to Darwin Núñez to try to knock balls in the air. Everton's back for themselves when Liverpool going long. Jake O'Brien is something like 6'4", and he's playing right back. Tarkowski is really good in the air as well. Braithwaite is really good in the air as well. And so it was just Everton was kind of set up to not really to play without the ball, and killed Liverpool's build up structure. The other thing I was noticing is Andy Robertson. Andy Robertson playing as a third center back. Sometimes Conor Bradley was leaving to go forward, but so Van Dijk and Kanate, and then Robertson's right next to him. Robertson's not higher up, and Van Dijk gets on the ball and he plays it to Andy Robertson. Robertson then looks up and he's got just a sea of blue in front of him. He goes Cody Gakpo and that's it. And then he basically has to pass it back and goes back to Van Dijk, and then Van Dijk under pressure, and then he passes it back to the keeper, and then they can basically recycle it. And this was happening over and over again. It took like 5 minutes to find a way to get through their first couple lines of pressure just to get the balls in the midfield, and then it goes in the midfield, and then it goes out wide to Gakpo or Salah, where they look up and they don't have Luis Diaz or anyone to play anything in the box. It was very, very frustrating, and I didn't like the way that they were using Andy Robertson. Uh, there's been a couple of times now that this has happened where Robertson's not bombing forward like he used to. Robertson's not offering an extra number ahead. And it's one thing where Liverpool have 70% of the ball, like we saw with Brentford, where it's just Kanate and Van Dijk, and they're able to just set up camp around the 35-yard line of an opponent's area, and maybe Liverpool can't get through the box and can't create that way. Liverpool were just struggling to get it past half field at times. So that was just the game to me. It was crying out for Darwin Núñez. It was crying out for Trent Alexander-Arnold. It was crying out for more than this. It was crying out for chaos. Like, make it so instead of you having all this control, actually play a risky pass. Allow for a transition where Everton actually have to leave, and then try to defend that, and then maybe try to open the game up that way. It was just very, very, very dull. And the second half basically went Everton's way. So here we have a Pickford long ball. Beto undercuts Kanate with a shove in the back. And Beto actually looks like he's going to be in on goal with Allison, but the whistle is blown this time. And so that'll be something to think about in a couple of minutes. That was one of the few times that Kanate lost a header to Beto. That's another thing too. Beto is scoring for them, but he's such a physical presence. Him and Decore are monsters. And Everton play. They call it hoofball. They call it long ball. It doesn't really matter because it doesn't. If the ball is in the air, if the ball is on the ground, the ball is still traveling, and they were really, really good at contesting those 50-50s in a way that usually Liverpool eat teams like this for lunch with Van Dijk and Kanate and Gravenberch. And Everton did enough to somewhat hold their own. I think the aerials were 50-50. That normally is always in Liverpool's favor. So fair play. That you've got the profiles to be able to play this way, and they were able to do it. The one kind of Liverpool moment, you have a Szoboszlai shot and then a Diaz rebound. Really good defending by Tarkowski. But the as the game goes on, again, it's very frustrating. Salah gets the ball and he just doesn't have much options other than go backwards or go to the side of him. These are the type of games where I feel like they lack a 1v1 specialist. Maybe you have Salah, but through the middle, um, Szoboszlai's playing as the 10 and just feel like he wasn't really comfortable trying to dribble through people. It was just you need someone to try to look to receive the ball kind of in front of the back line, but also turn and to basically in between the midfield and the back line, turn then drive at them. I feel like Jota can do that. Slot doesn't play him often enough, but I was wondering, could you find a way to maybe move Salah more inside, and maybe you have Szoboszlai go out wide to the right wing, not necessarily just permanently, but in moments, maybe rotate Salah more because too often to me, the games that Liverpool struggle the most. One, Robertson's playing and he's not doing anything to help out. But the other one is Salah's getting the ball, and more often than not, he's getting the ball on the touchline. He's getting the ball on the wing, and he's so far away from goal, and Salah can create for others, but here you're not playing with a tall striker for him to even do a cross in. So I would like to find a way to get Salah more inside. Now, you playing with Connor Bradley, that's not Trent Alexander-Arnold. One thing that Connor Bradley can offer you is these overlap runs where you make Connor Bradley go and he's makes the runs into channels and he gets some crosses off. But again, you didn't play with a striker. You didn't have anyone in the box other than Gakpo. So the way that the team was shaped up or set up was a failure, and so it was rough. Everton were just doing enough to frustrate them, and again, not having the striker was really painful. Robertson and Bradley needed to do more to make these runs outside if nothing else, free up Salah and Gakpo to be closer inside the goal, and that wasn't happening enough. Uh, we there's the other thing to say is when you can't play through blocks, you can break them through chaos, and that's where someone like a Darwin Núñez or Trent Alexander-Arnold, combination would have come in. You didn't have Alexander Arnold's ability to spray passes as well. That was missing. Usually Liverpool punish these kind of mid blocks, as they say, with that kind of directness and that kind of cross field kind of switch action. Bradley wasn't able to offer that, and it felt like Liverpool were missing that as well. So things are not necessarily good. Because Gakpo gets on the ball and he's looking up and he's got no one ahead of him. Salah was doing likewise, and just you don't really know what they're supposed to do. And then Everton really starts being the more threatening side. You start to see crosses in the box. You start seeing them shots being blocked. Liverpool can't get any attacks going. Everton you can't really create in the final third, but they're at least getting more numbers in the box when they do go forward. And Decore does time a run. There's a cross that comes in, and Decore has a header ride. It's a monster chance. There's a Harrison chance, and he misses it wide. After a long ball, Decore maybe a shove on Van Dijk goes unnoticed, but allows Everton to win another 50-50. That leads to a dangerous attack. And again, just Beto and Decore were just fighting for these 50-50s, and we're doing a pretty good job versus Van Dijk and Kanate. Uh, but the other thing too is I'm watching this and it's annoying as a Liverpool fan to watch Beto and Decore being able to cause such disruption. Where I'm looking at Darwin Núñez and Gakpo being able to do the same to Tarkowski and Braithwaite, and just it wasn't happening. Then they have the warning where Braithwaite scores, and Liverpool here Tarkowski wins the first header over Kanate. It's off a corner kick, and then O'Brien's able to jump on basically Van Dijk's back. The ball then finds Braithwaite to find the net. And the reason it doesn't count is because it's offsides, but Van Dijk basically has a moment where someone, it's either Tarkowski, it might be O'Brien. Basically, someone jumps from behind. It's a foul, and the foul wasn't called; it was just offside. So Liverpool were kind of getting lucky here. They're reeling, and then we do a change. We see Ryan Gravenberch off for Curtis Jones. And Darwin Núñez on for Cody Gakpo. So Luis Diaz stays on the field, who hadn't really been doing much, and then he moves out wide, where Luis Diaz can't really beat anyone 1v1 anymore, at least from my perspective. So I didn't really understand the change, but it doesn't really matter because they're able to get a goal anyways. Diaz is able to make a man miss, and then he sends in a ball. He sends in a cross. No one is in the box at all. But Tarkowski makes a big mess of it. He tries to clear it, and basically he slices it. Curtis Jones is able to run onto the loose ball, plays it to Núñez, and Núñez plays it back to Curtis Jones. Curtis Jones has a great hit going across the goal. Pickford has to save it. It's a good save, but he pairs it right into Salah's path, and Salah is able to score. It's another one of those moments where, again, at this point, maybe Liverpool are going to escape after playing a very terrible game. Salah's going to save Liverpool again. Hero act all on his own with a goal and assist. And then, Jota comes on and Salah has a curler that forces another Pickford save. And then at the moment, or at the end, Everton have like 3 or 4 chances to attack in the dying minutes. And so every time they're messing up, but they keep getting moments. So Liverpool are not able to see this game out well. Mikolenko has a dangerous cross and it's just terrible. Goes out wide or goes out of bounds. You have Beto that gets on the ball near the top of the box and he has a weak shot. Possibly could have troubled Allison there. You have Harrison with a terrible cross that also goes out of bounds. You have Irugbanum that has since come on. He gets in behind the Liverpool midfield, and he has a heavy touch, and that allows Liverpool to actually get lucky. And I think it's Kanate that steps up and is able to clear it. And then here on the clearance, Salah then is able to basically take on and counter. And he's running, and maybe his legs a little bit tired at this point because in the past Salah would have been able to sprint high everyone. Here he's taking his time and basically he's drawing people onto him, and basically his legs are completely taken out from him. I think it's Carlos Alcaraz, where it's not like anyone gets in the ball. Salah's completely taken out and the ref doesn't call it. It's a blatant foul, and that would have stopped the game as well. So that hurt. But Liverpool, or after that, are just they had moments to end this, and they start to get really sloppy. They have a free kick that Szoboszlai is able to draw, and they go long to Salah, and then Salah loses it instead of maybe try to keep the ball a little bit. It's 2 minutes to go in the game in stoppage time. Why not try to see this out a little bit more? And instead they lose it there, and then Everton are able to actually go ahead and get another counter. Liverpool able to stop that. Trent and Kanate both had moments, but here even Van Dijk has a cough up where Everton still get on the ball. Eric Bonham gets another chance, and his shot flies over the ball. So it keeps happening over and over again. There are errors everywhere. And there's a moment where Kanate heads the ball to Trent, and again Trent just launches the ball to no one. And you keep giving Everton the ball back, and then eventually Ashley Young is able to get on across. It's a long field switch. Finds Sakura, who heads it to Harrison. His first cross is blocked, so there's a little rebound here that bounces their way. It finds Mikolenko. Mikolenko just loops the ball in, and he floats it into the box. Kanate pushed from behind. It's very clear to see, but it's allowed to happen. So he misses the ball. It's the only header he misses all game. He allows it to bounce. And then Van Dijk misses up on the bounce, and then from there, you have Tarkowski in the box, and it's a great hit. They took forever to look at this as an offsides. I think he's probably more of a foul than offsides. Because again, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I feel like I'll be an equal opportunity here, where if it's not obvious to the naked eye, I think it should count. I think that should be the case for both. So I didn't really think it was offsides, but there is a foul, and they probably didn't even look at the foul. So. So and then at the end, things got really stupid. Decore and Jones kind of get into it with a little bit of fight. Jones gets sent off, so no Jones for Wolves. And then Arnie Slot gets sent off for shaking the manager's hand or shaking the ref's hand. So the warning here is Liverpool had opportunities to see the game out, and they allowed a dangerous ball to be floated in. It was always where Everton were going to cause the most trouble. And just a contested ball in the box, and you can see what a little chaos can cause. They have everyone in the box. They have O'Brien, who's really tall. You have Tarkowski, and just you allow any kind of loose ball. It's not great. It's not great by Nunez, who allows Tarkowski. It's probably his man. Trent could possibly do better to maybe stop the cross from coming in. That's maybe harsh. I don't think Allison can do anything because it's an amazing finish. I don't really know if Tsimikas can do much. It's just unlucky. Jota coming on. He had a moment to instead of maybe taking on the whole defense to score, he possibly could have dribbled to the corner flag. That was the moment where right before it, two Everton players clashed into each other head for head, and there was a long pause period where there was only 30 seconds to go in the game when this pause period happened, and then after the restart, Everton got 3 more minutes to do stuff, but. It is what it is. Everton did have some complaints as well. Bradley possibly could have been sent off. Early in with a second yellow, and the Kanate did have a bit of a shout where the ball did touch his arm in a so they did have a PK shout when the game was still 1-1. Or that was a little nervy as well, but that nothing came from that. That would have been just really unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, this was the game that was that was supposed to be their game in hand. The joke I had always was, thankful that it was called off because that game there wouldn't have been no McAllister, and McAllister scored here. There would have been no Kanate and no Allison. So that was the game that happened right after Newcastle, where Kelleher had just really struggled in the air, and so I did not want to play an Everton side where this kind of the game, especially with that kind of wind, would have been that kind of affair. So I figured, you get Kanate back, you get Allison back. This is probably the time to play them, and just played had a howler with the selection that he picked. So 6 shots total. Four on target, but 6 shots total. Uh, it wasn't a good game. Three draws now, three league draws in the last 6 games. And again, I get frustrated now when I don't see him playing with a striker. Dorian and Jota fit. I would like to see Jota and Dorian play together in this kind of game. You play with four attackers for a team that's playing this far back. Jota is like that difference maker, where you can afford to play with only two midfield. I think instead of like a Szoboszlai. So it was frustrating. Luis Diaz gets a lot of touches, but nothing in the box. When the team is pressing you, fine. Diaz can drop in like we saw for Bournemouth. It worked for Bournemouth. But here, it just did not. There was no threat for 70 minutes, so that was worrying. Um, and you're going into a hostile environment, a hostile atmosphere. The goal is just you're going to have to out physical a team. A team that's set up to play long ball in the air, and he flopped it. Bringing on Alexis McAllister when someone like an Indo, he brought on Jota towards the last 5 minutes. Someone like an Indo to see the game out. Indo's really good in the air as well, so it was frustrating. Not subbing out Indo, subbing out Gravenberch, your 6'3" guy to handle some of those aerials that could have come in handy. He subs out Gakpo. Maybe Gakpo was hurting, so you understand that. But he allows Diaz to stay on at left wing. He brings on Jota on, but I would have brought him on earlier. So that's maybe scrapping at straws. No Chiesa was even available on the bench. Um, I hope Chiesa wasn't really punished for that FA Cup game when he's playing with kids. That to me that also played in that game without a striker again as well. So I would like to see Chiesa get opportunities as well, especially in games when you can't. You need someone that can take on someone 1v1 and someone that can create a shot on his own. Jota can do that. Salah can do that, and sometimes Gakpo ish. Gakpo to me is more kind of a makes clever runs into the box kind of guy, and he can cut inside and can. Well, Gakpo has shown he does have a really good shot on him when he can get it off. But you haven't seen really Luis Diaz being able to do that, and Luis Diaz has gone a pretty good long time without scoring for a little bit, so it's frustrating. And Slot struggles now with teams that don't want to press the back line, and that's when the use of Robertson is starting to really be annoying. I think Tsimikas needs to be the starting left back. Maybe Robertson's better defensively. Maybe you use Robertson actually off the bench. But Tsimikas, to me, is a little bit more kind of forward thinking. Can play more kind of has better vision with his passing. Robertson is just very very stagnant, and it's frustrating to see because again he's one of the long time club greats at least for that position, and he's aging a little bit, and the way he's aging it's not making his game better, and so it's frustrating. Um, again, Liverpool have the majority of the ball, but it doesn't really matter. And again, it wasn't like the Forest or Brentford games where Liverpool had the majority of the ball in the final third. It was majority of the ball kind of in the midway, halfway line. So it was frustrating. Um, Salah continues to produce. He's got another goal and assist, and he's leading both goals and assists for the league. He's having an unbelievable, record like kind of career. And it's going to be really annoying, really unfortunate if he's not able to cap this off with a title at the very end, maybe two. We'll have to see. They're still alive in the they're in the final for the Carabao, but I don't want. I've already celebrated a couple of those recently. I'd like them to really have a nice Champions League run, and really, I want them to win the league. The contract situation is still annoying. It's still worrying with Van Dijk as well. Van Dijk, Salah, and Alexander Arnold. There's talks now that Kanate possibly could be talking to someone to other clubs in 6 months' time as well. So the way that they're handling contracts is not great. There could be a lot of squad turnover. This is really Jurgen Klopp's squad that he has built. It's not really Slots yet. Slots just doing this with his players. Uh, it feels like you have to do it now. Man City are not going to be as bad as they have been this season, and they've just spent $200 million to really overhaul their squad. Uh, it feels like they're going to be able to bounce back really really quickly. So this is the chance to get them. Arsenal, likewise, they have all those injuries. This is the chance to really benefit. This is a chance to win a title. This is a chance to win a title. Not in a COVID year where you can celebrate with your fans. And so I'm a little bit annoyed that they didn't do any business in January to kind of shore that up, and especially annoyed that they didn't that they sold some people, took some people out. Someone like a Jaden Dance, they allowed him to go out on loan. Where you're if an injury is someone like a Darwin Nunes, that's the only striker that you have. So a little annoyed here, and this was a chance to if they would have been able to see that out, if they'd been able to see out that Newcastle game a couple of back in a couple of months ago, it would be different, and you almost could be saying that it's done and dusted and tied up. But now there is doubt, so I don't like that. So I mean, at the end, is it the end of the world? The 7 point lead entering February. At the start of the year, I was just worried about Champions League football, so I would have bit your hand off. But again, the lack of business in the summer was worrying, and the lack of business now was worrying. New manager coming in did not know how this was going to work. Different style, different ideas. You see what he was doing in preseason with Fabio Carvalho. He wasn't really playing with a striker, and it was Fabio Carvalho and Curtis Jones like for a game. You didn't know how this was going to how this was going to work. So to have a 7 point gap, what they have basically in their control, they it could be a little bit more. They still have to play Arsenal at Anfield. So if it gets to a point where it actually becomes dead even, you can still control how it happens if you beat Arsenal at Anfield. So you bite your hand off for that opportunity. But that said, there's going to be you're going to have a Champions League run. Is that going to take some out of the legs? Robinson continues to be an issue. You could have made some business. You could have afforded some summer plans to bring in a left back this window instead, and they didn't. So hopefully he's in there. There's a contingency plan for him because I don't know if Zemeckis is it long term or not. Even though I do think Zemeckis is better to play now, but we'll see where we are in a month from now. Big month ahead. First Wolves, and then we'll see Aston Villa away, where they just brought in Marcus Rashford and Asensio, and Man City away. So who knew Man City now look like they could be something with the spending that they've done. Now, is it going to be the Man City that we saw versus Real Madrid or the Man City that we saw versus Chelsea? That remains to be seen. But it feels like eventually those new signings are going to click. And then Newcastle at home just immediately after that, before they play Newcastle in the cup competition. So Newcastle are the team that probably played them the hardest to this point. So that was at St. James Park, and so Newcastle always are going to be a weird one because their attack's good, their midfield's good, and the back line is Dan Burn and Fabian Schär, and it feels like you can get at them. So I don't know. The question now is how does this team respond? How does you can't have this season that Salah's having it and throw it away. That's all I'm going to say. And so I want to see more from Slot. I want to see him trust some guys more. Elliott. I continue to say his name now. He didn't play well for the FA Cup game, and unlucky for the PK. But Endo and Chiesa as well. Just you need to see more of these guys given opportunities, especially when the people being picked now aren't doing anything. I think Chiesa does more than Luis Diaz when he's played on the wing at least. So, and then we get to Everton. It's not the prettiest football, but it is effective. And so, just a few windows in, or a few months in, or a couple of weeks in, David Moyes is his team looking different. Braithwaite and Tarkowski look better on the ball. This O'Brien guy is a handful at right back. The Sean Dyche was not playing O'Brien. That's been one of the bigger changes that's come in. Decore back to his old self. So Sean Dyche was playing him almost in midfield now. Decore is almost like a second striker, and it just you've got the Everton that they had a couple of seasons ago when you have Calvert-Lewin and Decore just kind of being able to just bully people in the air, bully people in physical duels. This is a game without Calvert-Lewin, and I was kind of thinking, well, this is probably advantage Liverpool because Calvert-Lewin actually single-handedly beat Liverpool last season. Calvert-Lewin's only available for like 5 games a year, but at least that had been the case. He had been available for most of the season this year, and he just hadn't been able to find his scoring boots. And then he scores for Spurs, and then he picks up another injury. And so, there's Amanda Broja, and there's really no one else. And they invested money in Beto last season, and just it took it. He never really was able to find feet, and he looks an entirely different player now. So it's good for them there. They brought in Alcaraz as well. They lose in Dye. That's like kind of the only negative. But this was a team that was worried. How are they going to stay in the league? And bringing in they made a move to let go of Sean Dyche to bring in an old guy in David Moyes, and if nothing else, it definitely has settled them. They yeah, it's not the most not the prettiest football, but again, Liverpool come into your ground and you outplay them, you outshoot them, you out XG them. So fair play. And so we'll see what they do on the weekend, and then I'll be back to talk about what happens on the weekend. And so until then, you stay squatting and stop recording.